Hello and welcome to the oldest Flemish Spring Classic of them all, the 109th edition of the Schelder Prijs, with me, Jez Cox, and I'll be joined imminently by a man who's actually won this race, and that's Robbie McEwen. There's the list of all the Flanders Classic races. Next up, Brabantse Pijl. It's quite some collection of races. What a Tour of Flanders we had, of course, just last weekend. And here we are in the week between Flanders and Roubaix. There are the previous winners, starting off with Alexander Kristoff last year. Let's have a look at how he got that big solo victory. After his sprint win in 2015, it was Alexander Kristoff who really did perform a masterclass in grueling conditions last year. Let's have a little look back at how it happened. You could see the rain falling at the finish. Let's roll it right back to where they started in Terneuzen. Exactly the same course that they're going to be taking in today. In Quick Step, Alpha Vinyl, looking to try and boss things last year. Exactly the same loop, going out of the Netherlands into Belgium and finishing with those three closing circuits of 17.5 kilometres. The wind really blew last year, big echelons forming and a very, very select leading group. Jasper Philipsen here seen at the front of it. And riders gradually dripping off that leading group, some through tactics and others through, well, bad legs. Quickstep Alpha Vinyl had good numbers, as did Bora Hansgrohe. Ryan Mullen, one of those who was looking to stir it up as best he could. Casper van Uden as well of DSM, another of the riders who is back here again today. This was on to the closing circuits as we look at it right now, the final 17-kilometre circuits. It was Van Uden who was the first to attack. The others were looking at each other, but one big Norwegian in there was ready to play a card that the others might not have expected. And this was it. On the long but generous cobbled sector on the finishing 17-kilometre lap, Alexander Kristoff, who'd already won this race from a sprint, decided not to leave it to a sprint and take off by himself. It seemed to have caught the others by surprise. There was an awful lot of looking around going on last year. A lot of tired bodies too at this time of the season. And it had worked, because as they got closer and closer to the finish, it became evident that those who were battling out behind were battling out for second and third place. And Alexander Kristoff, as we've become accustomed to these last few years, pushing an absolutely monster gear all the way towards the finish in Schoten. And he had time to celebrate too. The only solo victory of Alexander Kristoff at this level, and what a win it was.
Yeah, it was a hard race, and yeah, Bora and also Alpecin was attacking every second time in the last lap. And I was suffering to cover all the moves because I was alone, because Gerben crashed out from my group. So at the end of the cobbles, I thought maybe just give it a try and see if I can get away. And yeah, nobody followed. And yeah, I just pushed everything I could. Yeah, I had good legs at the final, so it was all day full out, and I felt good all day. But yeah, it's nice to come solo. I think maybe it's one of very few victories I was solo. So yeah, it was a special one.
Danny Van Poppel won the sprint for second, just ahead of Sam Welsford. All three of those riders are back in the race today. As I say, vastly different conditions though. Look at the lovely sunshine stretching away from the east of South Zeeland, looking out across the North Brabant, and all the water which stretches in between the Schelder and the sea, of course. Mathieu van der Poel has added this race to his programme this week. Let's hear what he had to say. So back to today. These were the scenes at Sign-On in glorious sunshine this morning. Mathieu van der Poel alongside Jasper Philipsen. And Van der Poel has said, his team have said, he is here to support Jasper Philipsen, as we've seen him doing already this season with those incredible long lead-outs. Philipsen there looking delighted. He's had a really good spring too as well, the winner of Brugge de Panne in those atrocious conditions just a couple of weeks ago. And these were the scenes at the start. As I say, in lovely conditions, extremely light winds, as you can see from the Norwegian flag, which is just gently fluttering alongside the finish there. Some 4 to 5 kilometres per hour, blowing down from the north. and lovely sunny conditions to meet the riders. I have to say, they have earned this. It's been a little bit rough in mainland Europe the last couple of weeks, so it's nice to see a bit of warm spring weather for the peloton. They definitely deserve it after the last few weeks of quite testing racing at times. These were the scenes as they rolled away from Terneuzen across the port, heading eastward, ready to head and start to follow the Schelder River, going inland and then crossing over into the Belgian border, across the Belgian border, I should say, after some 70 kilometres of racing. This is the map, as I mentioned, crossing back over the water into South Zealand and Borsel province and going eastward then in the direction of the border with Belgium, crossing over just before Essen and then working its way gradually, snakingly southward towards those finishing circuits, 17 kilometres in length around Schoten itself, including that long stretch of cobbles that we saw Alexander Kristoff attacking on just moments ago. 3 finishing laps to come to the expected sprint finale. Well, I say expected sprint finale because we have a breakaway at the moment. They have somewhere in the region of a minute and a half. They did have over 3 minutes at one stage. I'll update you in just a moment on who they are as we're now looking down on live pictures. It gives me a chance to bring in, as I say, a man who won this race back in 2002. He's also been second on 3 occasions and third on another. And he'll correct me, I know, if I'm wrong. His name, of course, is Robbie McEwen. Hey, Robbie.
Oh, well, you got my name right, so I don't have to correct you on that one, Jez. Thanks, it was a nice introduction. No, it's a great introduction when my name's correct. No, that was all right, yeah. I rode this race 10 times, 5 podiums, a 5th, and a few other nondescript finishing positions. Always a tough race. I'm glad for the riders today. They've got some sun. You did say warm spring weather. Well, it's spring weather. It's sunny and not warm. It's going to be a maximum of about 12 degrees today. So it depends what you call warm, I suppose.
Of course.
I haven't been subject to those temperatures for a while, so that is bitterly cold for me. But it is a nice day after what the riders have endured. And I've been seeing a lot of social media from riders almost amazed that they're out for a ride in sunny conditions, out training wherever they are, spread across Europe. So it's been a really tough spring, and a lot of riders will appreciate the brilliant sunshine, clear skies. And I know there'll be a lot of sprinters today appreciating the very weak winds, the light breeze that's blowing across this part of the world, because there's been some pretty windy conditions too in races that we thought were going to be sprints, and they've been completely blown apart, like Brugge de Panne.
Yeah.
So the sprinters will be licking their lips for this one today.
Yeah, it's probably the most likely nailed-on day for a big sprint finish. Taking us back in a way, because last year was an outlier, wasn't it, with Alexander Kristoff's win. It was virtually much like, you mentioned Brugge de Panne, much like Jasper Philipsen's win. A win where basically it was a whittled down, constantly dissolving front end of the race, smashed apart by the rain and the wind, and then eventually one man was just a little bit stronger than the others. It was exactly the same with Jasper Philipsen as Brugge de Panne, where he overcame Olav Koy and Yves Lampaert, of course, in that 4-man breakaway. And then 1 year ago in this race, of course, Alexander Kristoff didn't even wait for that moment. He just attacked everyone and rode away. Of course, he's had a change of teams since then. He comes here leading the Uno X Pro Cycling team. And what a wonderful opportunity for him to get another big win. But for the boys in yellow and red, that team has built steadily over the last few years, Robbie. And it's a big signing for them, isn't it, Alexander Kristoff? He's their big guy.
Yeah, it's a huge signing for Uno X, and a man with just massive experience in the pro peloton, a massive palmarès as well. The races that he's managed to win in his career, tour stages, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, Gent-Wevelgem. He has just been incredible, and always seems to sort of somehow, for such a beast of a guy, fly under the radar a little bit. He gets underestimated, but he gets the job done on so many occasions. And he's what you could call, yes, in the twilight of his career. He's 36, 37. but he can still perform, and he can bring so much experience to the team, to the young riders. And they have got some really strong young pros at Uno X. And I think the experience that Christoph is sharing there is going to be invaluable and really bring that team up to the next level.
Absolutely. Well, he's not going to have it all his own way today. When we go back to the breakaway, I'll update with you with who is in there. But we have an awful lot of sprint talent here, don't we, Robbie, today? Let me just talk people through who's in the breakaway while we look at them. At the back here is the newly stepped-up team, moving up from continental level to the pro team level, and that is Josh Kench, one of an entirely Kiwi team, apart from the in-form Rory Townsend this week. He's in the yellow and blue at the back of Bolton Equities Black Spoke. Just rolling behind him, we have one of two Beat Cycling Club riders. Bram Dissel is the rider right at the very back, and he's in the breakaway with Vincent Hoppezak. Those two Beat Cycling riders. So the smallest team in the race, or the lowest ranked, if you like, because they're the only continental team here, have two riders in the breakaway. Dropping onto the back there, actually I'll deal with the front first of all, shall I? This is Giulio Massotti, the Italian for Team Corotec, cutting a very aerodynamic looking figure right at the front. And he is in the company. Just behind him is the other Beat Cycling rider, that's Vincent Hoppezak. Also in there, Novo Nordisk's Filippo Ridolfo. He's just dropped to the back. Might get a chance to see him in a moment in that new kit for them this year, the dark blue with the green sleeve of Novo Nordisk. He's the Italian. Lots of Italians in this breakaway. Who have I not mentioned? Let's see who rolls through next. This is Bingo Wallonie-Bruxelles Cyril Dessal. Cousin, I found today, of Guillaume van Kilsbolk, of course, his teammate. Those two are cousins. I had no idea. So related not just as teammates, but also genuinely related as well. Who else have I not mentioned in this breakaway? I think that is everyone. Ruben Apers is in there as well. The Belgian rider for Team Flanders Baloise in the yellow and blue, sitting on the back wheel of the aforementioned Cyril Dessel. So 7 riders clear. They did have in excess of 3 minutes, as you can see now, top left of your screen, with just over 100 kilometres to go. They have just over 1 minute and 30 seconds on that chasing peloton. So, Robbie, we've mentioned Alexander Kristoff, our defending champion. He is one of 5 former winners in this race, which is quite a rarity these days. Riders and teams seem to swap around and change around so much, but this is such a nailed-on hashtag Sprinters World Champs. We'll maybe discuss that in a moment. But we've got Kristoff, who's won it twice. Cavendish, who's one of only 2 3-time winners. Mark Cavendish, he's here as well. Fabio Jakobsen has won it twice in 2018, 2019. Jasper Philipsen was the last sprint winner in this race 2 years ago. And Caleb Ewan was the winner in 2020. You might remember that was the, viewers may remember, that was the COVID-affected year where they ran it as a circuit race just around our finishing circuit in Schotten. So lots of former winners, but that's not all the big names we have to look out for today, Robbie, is it?
No, there's plenty. So you've mentioned those former winners, but throw in the likes of Gerben Thijssen from Intermarché Circus Wanty, Jordi Meus from Bora Hansgrohe, Max Walscheid from the Cofidis team, Edward Turns, a man in good form recently, the senior rider of Trek Segafredo, Sam Welsford, a man who started the season really strongly with a couple of stage wins back-to-back in San Juan, and has been just really well performed through the early part of the season in the bunch sprints. Matteo Moschetti from the Q36.5 Pro Cycling team, and Dylan Groenewegen from Jaco Alula. So, looking through this list, I saw a stat just a little while ago that over 50% of this field today identify as sprinters. So if they had to name one specialty out of everything that you could be, they're all fast men. So minimum half the field. Mathieu van der Poel, just maybe he had that thing that some people say is good luck, and he had a low-flying bird target him. And
yeah,
I don't know why people say that's good luck.
I can tell you, Robbie, I've experienced it on another front. I was commentating on a criterium in England about 5 or 6 years ago. Mid conversation into the mic, it happened to me, but it went, wait for it, in my mouth. It got between.
Wait, is there a video of that?
No, I hope not. I genuinely hope not.
I'm sure I've seen a sort of backstage video of that, Jez.
Oh, man, I tell you.
I'm going to have to hunt.
Yeah. It wouldn't have sounded too different to how I normally sound, I can tell you that much. It just tasted different.
Well, normally isn't that what's coming out, not what's going in?
You said it. You're very lucky you're in Australia and not in London, my friend. Anyway.
Get a punch on the arm, would I? Anyway, back to the race. Look at that, 100k to go, Jez.
Bang on the nose. And do you know what it is, though? I've my goodness, I think I covered the Brugge de Panne, and then I've covered a few more things since then. It is so nice to see warm sunshine. It is warm, Robbie, trust me. You may not think it's warm. It is, trust me, by Central European standards, it's very warm right now, and extremely light winds. So a gentle press on the riders' backs as they continue eastward. And I should just update people on exactly where they are, because that's a much more strung-out peloton now. The chase is on much more. They're headed eastward towards Hoogstraten. They've actually gone through, and I'll give it a little mention, Ugereide, where the cyclocross World Championships were, where Mathieu van der Poel, of course, won his World Championship. And that's one of the reasons he was really keen to ride today. It's very much a local race to him, this. But at the same time, Robbie, van der Poel saying he just wanted to get a little bit more of a hard effort midweek in before Paris-Roubaix. Does that sound sensible? Everyone's different, of course.
Yes, everyone's different, but you've got to, if you can choose your own program, which stars like Mathieu van der Poel certainly can. It's for him, it's a training run. It's a training exercise at race speed to get some speed in the legs. Paris-Roubaix, apart from the cobbles, it's more or less a completely flat race. So take away all the punchy climbs like the Ronde van Vlaanderen and everything else we've been doing through your Tirreno, San Remo, etc. It's just getting the legs used to a long day, completely flat, always on the pedals, and just keep that rhythm. Maybe that's what he feels he needs to really keep that engine running at full RPMs. So we just see Caleb Ewan taking on the feedback. And, well, maybe no surprise to see the Australian with a vest on. Even though it is sunny, it's chilly.
Oh, dear. This is going to continue, isn't it? It's like, it's glorious.
It's going to go on and on and on, Jez. Yep. There's Groenewegen at the back of the group, number 91 in the blue on the left-hand side.
There's an awful lot of fast men in here, Robbie, isn't there, with a bit of a point to prove today, isn't there? This would be a lovely win for anyone in the Schelder race, but for a few of them, it might be a little step back up again, just a little boost to the confidence. I'm thinking about Mark Cavendish. I'm thinking to a certain extent about Caleb Ewan, Dylan Groenewegen, who've started the season well. Both had a couple of wins. But Cavendish, there's a good example of a rider who this would really set things back on track for him at Astana, Kazakhstan, wouldn't it?
I think getting back on track for Mark Cavendish would just be being able to take part in the bunch sprint. I'm not even talking about the win or even a podium, but being at the pointy end when the sprint is going to start and at least riding into a top 10, for example, would get things on track. And, I think for Mark today, based on how he's been so far this early season, a top 5 would be a great result and something to really build on and springboard into the rest of the season. He's had a bit of an interrupted preparation with not finding a team till very late. It has been a difficult start. So he'll find his rhythm soon. It could take him a bit longer than it used to, but he'll get going, and maybe today's the day.
Welcome back, those of you who've been away on a breakaway. We're looking in on our 7 riders who, as I say, have a gentle breeze. Not much, but just a gentle breeze pressing on their backs as they head in towards Hoogstraten. We're right on the edge of Hoogstraten now. We are in Belgium. We've left the Netherlands in this race, which didn't originally start in the Netherlands all that time ago when it first ran in 1907. It was an entirely Belgian race, but much more recently it sort of celebrated... and it's always been named after the Schelder, the River Schelder, but it now celebrates it in its entirety because the River Schelder itself flows all the way from northern France right the way through Belgium and out through Netherlands and out into the North Sea, of course. So makes sense that it starts where it spills out and then travels its way southward. We're not exactly following the River Schelder all the way, but You can, Robbie. You must have ridden the cycle path alongside the Schelder through Belgium plenty of times, the old chain gang and that sort of thing.
Jez, I've spent so many kilometres along the Schelder. I used to use that section of path like so many riders between Oudenaarde and Ghent, and most often behind the scooter, what the Belgians call the Brommer. So behind a Vespa or similar, hundreds of thousands of kilometres behind and just motor pacing it at race speed along the Schelder. And as you said, yeah, the Schelder, the river, originates in northern France, where it's called, of course, in French, the Lescaut. And the Flemish word is Schelder, or name is Schelder. And finishes in Schoten, and they're very, very proud of Schoten as the finish town, and they want to pump up the fact that it does finish in Schoten. Philipsen has been absolutely dominating. He's been, for mine, the best sprinter so far this season. I think he's got the most wins as well. If that's off the top of my head, correct me if I'm wrong, anyone.
Yeah,
I know you will, even if I don't ask you to.
I think he's got three wins so far, which is, I think Jakobsen's got two too, but I think he's got 3.
Yeah, well, Philipsen started really late too. I mean, he didn't start until Omloop at Nieuwsblad. Then Kuurne the next day went straight to Tirreno, and then he won 2 stages, and after that, Brugge de Panne. But they're 3 World Tour races that he's won. Dylan Groenewegen, I think, needs to get back on track a little bit. Was not bad in Tirreno, but didn't win a stage. He won in the Saudi Tour. He won a stage there in the UAE Tour. Has been a little bit quiet since then, but the races, how they've panned out, just haven't suited him either. Caleb Ewan, same boat. He's been solid. He's had a couple of really close calls, and we've spoken about it quite a lot. He actually got second in a race where he crossed the line first, by all accounts, except the most important one, the UCI, and their, I'm going to say it, dodgy photo finish. But yeah, Caleb has been riding solidly, but not had the big results to show for it. So would be really looking for a big result today, and his team would love that too on Belgian soil for their headline act in Caleb Ewan.
Yes, absolutely. We're looking at the front of the peloton. Lots of black of DSM, the Dutch team, and Marco Haller with a strapped-up left knee, riding for Bora Hansgrohe. Robbie?
Jez, I wonder if DSM's got any surprises in store for us today, like they did in the Ronde van Vlaanderen. Those who tuned in and watched it when they were on one of the early climbs, the Kortekeer, they were in number at the front of the bunch, and they went at, I would call it, less than walking pace.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Really bunched things up, and as they came to the top, just went absolutely full gas and split the bunch to pieces. And about 2.5K later, they just desisted, and it just all came back together. But no one was quite sure what they were trying to achieve there, and they said it was purely spur of the moment. It's almost a sort of fun gag you'd pull on a training ride or something. I don't know, but
it was
quite weird to watch it go down in the race. But it was entertaining.
It was good. It was good. Yeah, I mean, weirdly enough, as always with these things, if you look at the social media around it, there were quite a lot of people moaning about it, how it doesn't seem fair, and they're expecting. Well, obviously, there's rules, right? They're sticking to the rules, and then there's what people think of as being fair. I mean, it's racing, isn't it? If the road is narrow and you block the road, you create that barricade across it. That's that's it. That's racing. But it was the way that, as you say, I wondered whether when I actually tuned in at that point, thought, well, they must have someone who's away or something. But no, it was actually slowing off, ready to then suddenly hit it really hard, sort of slow, quick.
Yeah, and it's a legitimate tactic. I mean, riding in an echelon in a crosswind, well, that's fair. So also making an acceleration on a hill, it doesn't matter how slow you make things go before that. There's nothing not fair about it. It's a tactic. It's a strange-ish one. People wouldn't have really seen it before. But it's a great way to split things in races like the Ronde van Vlaanderen and all those races in the Vlaams Ardennen. You can really cause havoc in the bunch and split it to pieces and make people work so much harder than they want to. One of the actual victims, call him a victim at that point, maybe by the end of the day it did make a difference. But Mathieu van der Poel, he was behind that one as well, behind the split, and had to use riders up. And it was right after that was Soren Kragh Andersen out of the race. He's his sort of number one lieutenant. So it did damage riders. It did sap their energy and when you look back throughout a race, it's all those little key moments that add up to putting him sometimes on the wrong side of a gap.
Looking here at Gerben Thijssen, who, as you mentioned earlier, Robbie, was the one who just pipped Caleb Ewan. It was the Grand Prix Gempi Montserrat. We did that together, I think. Yeah, I can't remember now who was on commentary.
I didn't
with
commentate that one, but I watched the end of it. Well, I watched the finish plenty of times. I tell you what, though, I don't want to take anything away from Gerben Thijssen because he did quite an incredible sprint, and it was so close on the line. It was almost a dead heat. And he came out of the wheel of Caleb Ewan, which not many can say they've done that. So Thijssen's also, he's proved this season to have gone to that next level as a sprinter to take on the big names of the sprint. So I'm looking forward to see what Gerben Thijssen can do today as well. He had a crash the other week, but he seems to have got over that pretty well. I mean, he's a really solid, muscular guy. So I'm sure that's helped him sort of soak up the impact. Somewhat like a rugby player who's been tackled really hard, just gets up, shrugs it off and moves on.
Well, you mentioned Gerben Thijssen. That gives me an opportunity to give a bit of a shout-out for Rory Townsend, the Irish road race champion, because he actually took the biggest win of his pro career, the Irishman, riding for Bolton Equities Black Spoke. He's got a teammate in the breakaway in Josh Kench. But Rory Townsend is now somebody that I'm delighted, as someone that's watched him race a lot throughout his career and commentated on him in the Criteriums and the Tour Series in England, Scotland and in Wales. But he managed to get a big win in his career, Rory Townsend, winning the Rue Tourangelle, the French, the Coupe de France race, beating Gerben Thijssen and getting a really, really big victory for him. So I think I'll pick out Rory Townsend and we'll watch out for him because he's obviously a man in form, the Irish champ.
Yeah, that was a great finish too. I watched that. I watched the replay of it the other day and I was really impressed with Townsend. There's been some really great racing over the last month, Jez, that some of these smaller races that people may not be aware of, like that, the Rue de Tangel, Cholet was another good finish. Yes, there's just some fantastic races on of all levels, not just the World Tour. And I think it's just so good that people can watch all of these races on GCN, not just have to sit back and wait for the few and far between, just the World Tour races, the well-known races. You get everything and get to know so many more riders and see so many more exciting races.
Beat Cycling, once again, always so active in these races. Whenever they're there, this Continental team, always big players in the breakaway, Robbie, aren't they? And I like their kit and their bikes. They've settled on a very stylish look these last few years. It's a team made up of, primarily, initially, lots of track riders as well. Yuri Havik is still in their team, six-day superstar, of course. And they've had two riders in the break, Hopperzak and Dissel. Bram Dissel, one of their exciting young Dutchmen. Just come back from a very good ride, actually, Robbie, in the Olympias Tour. I think it's a race you and I have discussed before. That's got a long history as well, that race. It's a 2.2 UCI race, Olympias Tour. But one of the few, along with the ZLM Tour, I think it's the only stage race in Holland, which in itself is remarkable. I think we just lost Robbie's sound there for one moment. He's saying something very interesting. I know he is, but we'll just wait for him to come back in. Robbie, you jump back in when you think you've... I think Robbie's just gone a little bit quiet. We will give it a moment because, that was the remarkable one. Looking back at the results of Bram Dissel from that Olympias Tour, it is one of only two Dutch men's professional stage races. Thankfully, there's some good women's Dutch stage races as well. Olympias Tour and the ZLM Tour, which of course is coming up in just a couple of months here at the home of cycling on Eurosport GCN. And we are looking at the face of the Team Flanders Baloise rider, Ruben Apers. Spent 3 years with the Lotto Soudal under-23 team before turning pro with Flanders Baloise, the team which is responsible for bringing on young Flandrian talent and feeding it on to the next level. This is Giulio Massotti from Verona. Joined the team last year from Vini Zabu as this Corotec team step up from being a continental team to a pro team. along with Bolton Equities Black Spoke. Those two teams making that step up, and it is quite a big step up from the continental level to the pro team level. I'm just going to bear with us a moment, folks, while we just try and reconnect with Robbie. Our sound is just failing us for a moment. But you can see the gap yourselves. It's come down by 15 seconds while we've been on air, which is not much. It shows how well these 7 riders are working together. And we now get a visual look at what the gap looks like out on the road in, thankfully, really still conditions. You can see the peloton pressed against the left-hand side of the road, pushing out to the right from where the very, very gentle breeze is coming from, but not really enough to smash things to pieces. And these are the roads that we saw the race being smashed to pieces on last year, when Alexander Kristoff managed to find himself in that very select leading group who had the peloton chopping up behind them. No such weather this time, much kinder to the riders, and a gradual winding in of the gap of that breakaway of 7 riders that originally, as I say, had 3 minutes, and it's now down to 1 minute and 18 seconds. Robert Gies and Senneleisen, the 2 riders for Alpecin de Koning, have been doing the work on the front, thinking about Jasper Philipsen. And don't forget, as I say, Mathieu van der Poel is there too, and looking to have a bit of a hit out today. So will we see Van der Poel do that big lead out for Philipsen? We will see in some 80 kilometres time. The riders have exited Hoogstraten and are headed towards Brecht. They're headed due southwestward in the direction of the finish in Schoten. And those 3 finishing circuits, each of which has a fairly long cobbled sector in it, but it's relatively smooth, the cobbles down there. Robbie will tell us all about them, having ridden them before, just as soon as we have his sound issues sorted.
How about that now, Jez?
Now that is Robbie McEwen, loud and clear. Sorry for that, folks. Thank you for bearing with us.
And nothing changed on my system,
well, there we go.
It just seems to be working.
No, you're with us.
No, I was just playing with you, Jez. I was just moving my lips, but no sound was coming out.
I've used up all my notes, mate. That's it. It's all gone now. You have to talk for the next 2 hours.
Well, just talking about those cobbles. So on that local lap, the 17-kilometre lap in Schoten, it's in the Broekstraat, which translates to Pants Street. Now you know.
Right.
So in the Broekstraat, it's a 1.7 kilometre section. Cobbled, yes. Rough, no. Difficult, no. When they're wet, provides a few more opportunities, but it's a fairly easy section of cobbles. They're sort of there for effect, but they're not exactly going to break up the race. What is the problem on that circuit for the riders is how technical it is. It's quite tight. It slings its way through the suburbs, and there's some pretty tight turns. There's a tight right-hand turn onto that cobbled section, and then it gets really narrow, then another tight right-hander off it and along the Albert Canal. When it's windy, that can get difficult. Today it's not a windy day, but it really strings out when they come off the cobbles and along the canal there. And the trickiest part of the circuit is actually the last 2.5 kilometres. There's sort of 3 corners, and there's quite a tricky chicane that goes quite narrow, which brings them onto the final straight. So it's one where you've got to be in the right position at the right time and just make sure you get to those checkpoints in the right place.
Welcome back to those of you who've been away on a break, and I include Robbie in that. We are watching a gap which is still hovering around about 1:15, consistent and steady chasing from the peloton behind, but almost sensing that they've got them on their comfortable leash now, our 7 riders who are out front. They've exited, well, they're in St Leonard's right now. That's what we're looking down on, and continuing to head southwestward towards our finishing circuit. Robbie's given us a bit of an insight already into the cobbles and what they're like on the Broekstraat. What did you say it stood for?
So Broek means pants.
Mm-hmm.
Broekstraat,
yeah.
So the Pants Street.
Pants Street. Right, we must find out why. Do you not know why?
I do not know why.
I'm very disappointed.
It's quite a common name.
Pants Street. Right. If you know why, do tweet us and let us know. I'm at Jez Cox. I would love to know if you know why. Of course, most people will just be making it up, so I don't know why I've put it out there, Robbie. Could be anything.
Well,
anyway.
OK, put it this way. Tell us on Twitter, wrong answers only.
Yes. Yeah, please do. Let us know. An opportunity between these two beat cycling riders for one of them to do a little bit more than the other. And we're looking in on our 7 riders. If you are just recently joining us, they are Cyril Dessal is the tall figure, second wheel there in the day-glow yellow of Bingoal Wallonie Bruxelles. Dessal on the front right now. He has alongside him Bram Dissel, the Dutchman, and Vincent Hoppezak, the 2 Dutchmen for beat cycling. And going through the shot there in the claret of Team Corotec, Giulio Massotti, the Italian rider. And right in the middle, as I mentioned, Josh Kench, the Kiwi, 21-year-old for Bolton Equities Black Spoke. He is a product of that team's academy as well. They've built very steadily, that team. Black Spoke Cycling as they were once, now Bolton Equities Black Spoke, stepping up from the continental level, as I say, to the pro team level, and changing their kit as well over the winter to that yellow and kind of inky purpley blue. And just to finish off the list of who else is in there, Filippo Rodolfo from Udine, the Italian of the Team Novo Nordisk team. The team, of course, I mention every time because it is important, is entirely made up of type 1 diabetics, and he is one of them, balancing out his blood sugar levels and racing as an elite athlete at the very highest level as well. And in the breakaway today, there's the shot looking down on the chasing peloton, which is certainly strung out a little bit more now that the chasing is persistently steady hard, but it is still 1 minute 30, so the gap has gone out a little bit more as well, Robbie. Not seeing much of the river so far. I think people who are tuning in maybe to watch Schelder Prijs for the first time might expect to see more of the Schelder, but we are running in the direction the Schelder heads in and picking up little bits of water along the way. You mentioned the Albert Canal, of course, on the finishing circuit. We mustn't allow people to think they were looking at the Schelder. That is, the Albert Canal is fed by the Schelder, of course. The Schelder itself is much bigger. You were mentioning riding alongside it. I too have ridden much of that that cycle path over the years, heading out of Oudenaarde, and there's some very big boats. I mean, the river itself is enormous, and the size of the importance of it as a trade route, even now for ships and things, is pretty prominent. It's a beast of a stretch of water, that's for sure. So we look at the tail end of the peloton, and as you can see, an opportunity of 1 or 2 riders to water some of the local crops as they go. That shows you as a clear indication that it's not fully on right now. However, we do have the tractor in full effect at the front. Tim de Klerk of Soudal Quickstep doing a long turn. And there's a team, Robbie, and we're not just talking about Fabio Jakobsen. I think after the classics so far, this would be another little step up for Soudal Quickstep, and who would have thought I'd have said that just a couple of years ago, eh?
Yeah, exactly. And I was just going to say the same thing about Soudal Quickstep. There's a little bit more pressure on them today because they've had a pretty lean season so far in this type of race. The classics, the monuments, the semi-classics, they have, compared to their historical results, as we do a flyover of Brecht, it's been a really lean season so far. They will be under pressure. Patrick Lefevre will have the team under pressure. He will not be a happy man with the way things have been going. And when they have been in the front and seemingly in a really strong position with a great possibility of winning, i.e. Brugge de Panne a couple of weeks ago, then they had one of their riders, Yves Lampaert, go on the attack, but with Jasper Philipsen and Olaf Koy, and he ran 3rd out of 3, while they had 4 teammates there, including Fabio Jakobsen. Textbook would have said, just ride for Jakobsen, force a sprint, lead it out, let him take them on. He's good enough to do it. And they ruined their own chances. They will be under a great deal of pressure. And even though some may say, oh yeah, but it's not Flanders, it's not Roubaix, it's just Schelder Prijs, they'll be under pressure to get a really good result. So no surprise to ever see them at the front of the peloton when Fabio Jakobsen's in the race. But especially today, there'll just be that little bit more, that higher level of intensity amongst Soudal Quickstep. And the question is, will they be able to pull it off when there is that bit more pressure?
Yeah.
We often see them pull it off when they're in the winning mood, when things are all going well, they're on a roll, it's really flowing. When it's like this and things have been a bit the results has been stunted, it gets a lot harder to get it right.
Yeah, absolutely. And they've got the pedigree of that team pressing at their backs as well. The success they've had, the expectation of dominance, particularly at this time of the year as well. And it has been a leaner last couple of years. We know, of course, how good Fabio Jakobsen is when he's delivered perfectly. And as you say, Robbie, I think you've hit it on the head there. The Wolfpack, I guess, hunts through confidence and strength in numbers, but also confidence in their strength in numbers. And this would be another little step up. We can see the French champions jersey just behind Tim de Klerk there, and that's Florian Sénéchal, the Frenchman, in that very smart national champions kit. They do national champions kits well at Soudal Quickstep, not hiding it like some teams and sponsors like to. Very evident and clear. Understandably, the other two teams in here who've been most prominent at the front, Lotto Destiny and, I should say, Alpecin de Koning, probably the team we've seen the most of at the front so far. In fact, looking down the line there, we could see Jasper Philipsen, the Belgian. Robbie, here's an interesting one for you, maybe for us to critique as we watch this gap, which is still sitting between 120 and 130, something like that. You won this race, as I said, in 2002. And you've got an excellent pedigree in this race as well, understandably, being a real sprinter's classic. This is a bit unfair because I haven't prepped you for this, but I'm just wondering what you think. If you could just roll with me on this, right? If you could plonk yourself into any one of these teams as yourself, right? You're not Mario Cipollini, you're not anyone else. You are Robbie McEwen with all of your makeup as a sprinter, the way you like to ride. Which team would you like to be plonked into in terms of the makeup of sprint lead-out? Let's imagine it's coming down to sprint finish. You've got your teammates around you. Which team would you like to be plonked into with 5K to go, and why?
I'd say, well, I mean, you're gonna say afterwards, oh well, yeah, it was probably a bit obvious. Plonk me into Alpecin de Koning. Yeah. I'm just going to put myself on the wheel of Mathieu van der Poel and say, get me there, get me in position, and it wouldn't matter where we were. He would be able to pilot me, bring me along the side, drop me off. If I said, okay, here, drop me in on the back of another train, or just go, he would be able to do whatever I asked.
Yeah.
So plonk me in there and I'd take his wheel. And I mean, taking nothing away from the other riders in the team, they'd be able to make sure everything stayed together. It's going to be a bunch sprint and help guide the likes of Jonas Rickard, be able to do that as well. But yeah, Van der Poel, take me anywhere I want to go.
No, I agree with you. And I think, actually, you mentioned Jonas Rickard. I think that's a role that he has grown into in the last 2 years, looking after Jasper Philipsen. He is such a valuable... he's a good one-day rider in his own right anyway, but he's such a valuable guiding guy for the last 5 kilometres in particular for Jasper Philipsen. But yeah, the Mathieu van der Poel final train is certainly one I think you'd want to be on. That sounds sensible. Let's see if it fires up, that train today, and from how far out, and what Van der Poel is capable of doing at a finish like this. Of course, they're going to have to catch the breakaway first and then control things as well. But interesting. Apologies for throwing that one straight at you, Robbie. I just thought it would be interesting. I keep mentioning Robbie's previous performances in this race. Let's have a little track back over the last 20 or so years. Robbie was the winner in 2002, and as I said, after that, and this is going to be a bit slightly painful for you, maybe, Robbie. We'll go over your 3 second places. He was
just before you do, Jez,
no, don't interrupt me now. Come on. I know what you're doing.
Firstly, no. I just want to acknowledge I just want to acknowledge that my 2002 victory in this race is now old enough to go and celebrate in Vegas.
Yeah. Robbie McEwen was the winner over Tom Steels that day as well, in second place, the big Belgian. So on home turf too. That can't have gone down too well, Robbie. Don't say anything about that though. Let's leave it there. Robbie was beaten by some pretty illustrious talent though as well, it has to be said, because the next person to beat him into second place anyway was Tom Boonen in 2004. And then Robbie was beaten by Great Britain's own Mark Cavendish as well in 2007, before Cavendish won it 2 more times, to be one of only 2 riders to win it 3 times, along with Petrus Olibrandt, the Belgian rider. Kittel has the most number of wins, Marcel Kittel, who has 5 in total, only separated by Alexander Kristoff in 2015. That's not necessarily a question I'm putting to you, Robbie, but maybe you can tell us. It's going to be an exciting weekend for both the men and the women. I quite like the men's and women's races being on different days, actually. It's a nice, controlled, central focus, isn't it, on that race?
I'm with you. I really think it's a fantastic thing that they're on separate days, that both races get full exposure on their own day. So often we see the women's race, and it is shorter, but it's run on the same day, but you don't get to see all of it. And there's sometimes a bit of attention taken away. But on the other hand, on the day of the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the crowds that were there for the entire day, and the women's race finished after the men's race, they said they've just never seen so many people at a race, and the atmosphere that brought was quite incredible. And also what it did do for the women's race as well, it boosted the viewer numbers, because people had watched the race, watched the men's race, and stayed on and got, oh, how good's this? Because the finale of the women's race was also incredible. They're 2 just brilliant races, and I hope we get even a race that's half as good on the weekend for Roubaix, but I'm sure we will. And it's shaping up to be a fine weekend, or at least a dry weekend, which I think is a great thing for Roubaix. I think you get a much better race when it's dry. It's dramatic when it's wet, but you lose too many great riders just in accidents with bad luck. I'd much rather see a dry race. I think that's what Roubaix is really made for.
Absolutely. Well, we look forward to that one this weekend. Both days, a full weekend of racing. Good luck getting out on your bike, or maybe if you do, head out early and get yourselves back ready to settle down and take it all in here at the home of cycling on Eurosport GCN. It looks, Robbie, as if the chase isn't necessarily going any harder, or at least if it is, the breakaway is going harder, because it is sitting exactly the same, this gap. It's hovering, it has done for about 30k now, at exactly, well, I say exactly, 125, 130, something like that.
They've got them on a 1 minute 24 leash.
Yeah, absolutely. It will not stay like that. It's got to come down a little bit more towards that magic 1 minute mark, perhaps. There's still 72k to go as they are getting a little bit closer to the finishing loop. I can't help but think, Robbie, as well, that it's part of one of the reasons this is such a sprinter's delight, this race, surely has got to be to do with that finishing loop. I always think that when there's a finishing circuit that's ridden multiple times, it's kind of a race of not quite 2 halves, but there's the waiting to get to that circuit to affect the end game, and you kind of know the end game will always happen on that circuit.
To a certain extent, yes, but this race is also very weather dependent. I mean, if it's wet and windy, you get a completely different race. I've ridden the Schelder Prijs in conditions like they have today. Fine and sunny, really light breeze. There's no effect on the peloton weather-wise, and it's more than likely to come down to a sprint. I've been in other years where it's been really windy and it's split after 5k, and you've had 20 riders go to the finish, and that further split up, and it's been just nuts all day.
Team Jayco Al-Ula, the latest of those to add 1 or 2 riders to the front. Elmar Reinders, the Dutchman, next of those to be rolling through in company of Campbell Stewart as well, the Kiwi. So just adding a little bit of additional firepower to the chase at the front end, and perhaps staking their claim and elbow room in that final sprint on the Churchilan I think I'm saying that right, Robbie. Churchillan, the final straight.
No.
Go on. No, I've got it totally wrong.
Named after Winston Churchill.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of Churchill Lans in Belgium. So Churchill, you don't have to change how you say it because they say it exactly the same. Churchill Lan.
There we go. Thank you, Robbie. Like a thesaurus of... No, not even a thesaurus. Just like basically my translator on my shoulder. Perfect. This is what's needed. I'm just going to start throwing random words at you and seeing...
Flemish pronunciation coach. Oh, well, go back a little while to Hoogstraten. So here's a lesson for everybody at home because Flemish words are notoriously difficult to pronounce because as English speakers, what we see is not how it is actually said. And a double O in Flemish does not say oo. It says O. Hoogstraten. And your OE, as in Van der Poel, the OE says oo like pool. It's like swimming pool. For it to be Van der Poel, it would have to be double O. Double O says O.
I was mentioning, did I get my Ogeride right earlier? Ogeride? I was talking about Ogeride. Go on.
Hogerheide.
That's the one.
Hogerheide.
Very useful.
It's a difficult one to get your tongue around the sounds. You've got to make the right shape with your face.
Absolutely. Very near the back end of the field there, ripping through that
corner. There's a name for you.
Go on ahead.
Well, they're on the way to Sint-Job-in-'t-Goor.
Say it again, please.
Sint-Job-in-'t-Goor.
Spelt Sint, S-I-N-T.
Job
is J-O-B. Int-Goor. Goor, G is an H, right?
Goor. If you're Dutch, you
yeah.
do a much harder G, but the Flemish do a soft G.
Well, once they get there, they encircle the Royal Antwerp Hockey Club. They literally just touch the edge of the town there, go around the hockey club, and then head southward. Again, starting to pick up a little bit more water as they do so. Running southward alongside the... it's not the canal, actually, there. It's the... I've forgotten what it's called now. It is the... Desselschoten Canal, the slightly smaller canal. There's a kind of a tale of three waters here. There's the Schelder, which is the big river, and then the two canals, the Albert Canal being the biggest of those. We can just see Rory Townsend in the back there, the white jersey of the Irish champion, who I picked out already as someone to watch today. As I say, Robbie, it's been a real delight for me, that, watching him develop as a rider who's been based with English teams the last few years. He, it has to be said, was one of two or three quite lucky riders as we watch Mark Cavendish, I think just coming back in off the back alongside Jonas Rickard there. Bit of conversation between the two of them. Just trying to hear what he's saying. Private conversation we're listening in on there, Robbie. There, Cavendish back in, no problems at all. Yes, just to get back to Rory Townsend, he was one of three riders who made the switch from one of the latest British UCI Continental teams to disband, unfortunately, this year. But seemingly having made that switch at just the right time as well, along with Matt Bostock and one other rider whose name now mistakes me. But a good move for Rory Townsend. It's just a shame for British teams that yet another British Continental team has disbanded Tim Elverson's team, which for so long had run, giving young British riders an opportunity to step up to the pro ranks. And one of those British riders, the British champion there, Mark Cavendish, is in, I would say, in need of a nice win beginning of this year. He did come close, didn't he, in the UAE Tour with that third place, but that's been the best it's been so far. He has, Robbie, got Cees Bol with him again here. So his, well, certainly what we are told by the team is his sort of number one lead-out guy. He does also have Martin Lars and a very exciting Russian rider, Gleb Syriza, here as well. So there is a seriously strong punch to finish things off if Cavendish is up for it.
There is. I was just going to say the same thing, Jez. With Gleb Syriza, Martin Lars and Cees Bol, if they can get themselves organised and have the legs, of course, at the end of the day, then that is some incredible firepower in that team. But it all depends if they've got someone who can finish it off. And I think you don't necessarily have to talk about just a win being the boost that Cavendish needs, but a high placing. Just being able to take part in the sprint, which hasn't really happened over the last month or so. But maybe with all that racing in the legs now, that the form is on the up, and this could be the day with fairly nice conditions, a relatively easy ride in. But it's also a matter of how much risk someone's prepared to take, because we've gone through the field and noted how many top sprinters are in this field. With all their helpers, lead-out trains, it's going to get so crowded at the front of the race. There's not room for everyone. It's going to be a case of who's willing to take the risk, push and shove, and really establish themselves at the front and dominate proceedings. And if you're not prepared to put yourself in danger, you're not going to be at the front. It just comes with the territory.
Yeah, absolutely. We were looking there at Max Walscheid, the tall Cofidis rider, the German. He also has a pretty good record in this race. He was second in 2019 and sixth in 2018 as well. And there's a man who, certainly if he can get going and get up to speed from a reasonable distance out, is a pretty good bet for a top 10. And another one who has a good record here, Giacomo Nizzolo. He's been top 3. I'm looking down my result now to see where it was, but he's definitely been in the top 3 or top 4 in this race in the past. Nizzolo, been a bit quiet this spring. Really don't seem to have mentioned his name very much, the Israel Premier Tech rider, the former Italian champion. There he is, just giving his arm warmers away to his teammate. And maybe he fancies things today, or perhaps just fancies topping up his tan, Robbie Nizzolo. What these Italian riders are like. Then again, he's got plenty of tattoos to go on those arms already, so might not want to darken them too much. Just see Cavendish slowly working his way back up through the peloton, very, very gradually. There's a number of riders. Go on.
You used to be able to pick the Italians in the races in Belgium. You didn't even have to, even if you couldn't see which kit they had on or what race number on, you could always pick them racing in Belgium in the spring because they were the guys with leg warmers on. It has changed now. There's not many that get out there unless the weather is hideous. But back in the day, it just seemed to be that de rigueur, the Italians would race with the leg warmers on in Belgium.
There we go. Maybe they didn't want to get their legs dirty. That might be it. Keeping them clean for the podium, keeping them clean for the team bus. Marco Haller's back on the front. He's keeping his knee warm by the looks of it. I'm trying to think where that happened. I know he did have a crash not long ago, but it seems to be more than just sort of skin strapping. There's a bit of taping across the knee there in a supportive style as well. Kinesio tape, it looks like as well. So possibly a bit more going on with that left knee than we realised. Robbie, just going through my list of riders who've got good form in this race but who haven't won it. One of them was quite remarkable, actually, when I looked at it. It's Danny van Poppel, who over the last couple of seasons we've seen given his opportunity more and more frequently. His record in this race is impeccable. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th and 6th. And he was 2nd last year as well, Danny van Poppel. So if there's anyone in this whole field that deserves the win today, I would say Danny van Poppel. He's got all of the top 6 already, apart from the win. Well,
I'd love to see him complete the set and take the victory. I think, unfortunately for that stat, he's going to be in the service of Jordi Meus today, the Belgian sprinter from the Border Hansgrohe team. But should Jordi Meus not be able to take part in the sprint, then they've got a pretty good backup plan with Danny van Poppel. And he has shown himself over the last couple of seasons. He's one of the very best lead-out men in the peloton. Just so much power, because he's a guy who can, as you just mentioned, finish on the podium in his own right against the best sprinters in the peloton.
So into the final 65 kilometres. Let me remind people, we will cross the finish line for the first time in around about, what is that, 14k, something like that, 14k. So we're getting ever closer. In fact, we're getting a little bit closer to the first stretch of cobbles. Imminently, our breakaway will be rattling across the oh, here we go, Robbie. I'm ready. I'm watching you to see as I say this. Jobsensteenweg. Go on.
Well, I don't have that list in front of me right now.
Steenweg. Yeah, it's. I'm going to roll with that. I'll say it again one more last time. Jobsensteenweg, the first of our tiny short cobble sectors coming up imminently for our breakaway.
Sint-Jobse Steenweg.
That's the badger.
That's what I'm deducing from. I haven't got it in front of me. I can't see it written down.
Yeah. No, it is our first little stretch of micro cobbles. Very smooth, particularly in this week leading up to.
So it's just a normal road, is that what you're saying? They're micro cobbles, so there's really just a road.
There's plenty of races in the United Kingdom in years gone by that say they rattle across cobbles, and here we are. We're on it right now.
Here we
It
are.
is effectively a kind of brick paved road. There is definitely a difference between that and cobbles.
So, yes, this is what they call clinkers.
Wonderfully named.
Oh,
yes.
Yeah, the St. Jobse Steenweg. So just 500 metres on the clinkers, and as you can see on the left of screen, Tim de Klerk says, I'm just going to ride on the concrete. A little bit smoother, but the cobbles aren't really rough, and you can see they're having little to no effect on the peloton.
Absolutely.
This is what you do get on the circuit, so there you can see that, as you say, micro cobbles, the clinkers, the small pavers, but a lot of tight turns will be on the circuit as well. So that's one of the hardest parts about maintaining your position at the front of these narrow roads, the push and shove, that fight for position. If you get too far back, you come out of heavy on the brakes going in, come out of those corners, it really strings out, and you can find yourself a long way behind or even behind a split. So I always found that the best way to ride the schelder press once you came onto the local laps was just stay in the top 25 the entire time. Try not to hit the front, but at least stay in the first 25.
We've mentioned the current Irish champion already. There is last season's Irish champion, Ryan Mullen, who was in that lead group last year doing his best to work for Danny Van Poppel and others. Such a useful talent. Don't get too much of an opportunity to see him putting his time trialling to good use these days, the Irishman. But a very fine time trialist, and now, as he has been for a good few years, a really important part of the sprint lead-out train at Bora Hansgrohe. And there is a peloton that is gradually picking up pace. Very close to the minute mark now for the 7 riders who are out front. And we're getting closer all the time, Robbie, to entering the circuit because they go clockwise. They make their way south towards the canal, the Albert Canal, as you said, go right along the banks of it, which is where they meet the cobbled sector of Broekstraat. And then they go northward and back through Schoten itself, where the finish line is. And that technical run-in, looking forward to seeing that the first time to see how it's looking. But it is a twisty, windy one that brings them to the finish line as well in Schoten itself, in the sunshine in Belgium. This, the oldest Flandrian Spring Classic race, 1907 when this race started. And the riders in the breakaway, for those of you who are just recently joining us, being led here by Ruben Apers, the Belgian rider for Team Flanders Baloise, as it is this year. Of course, it used to be called Sport Vlaanderen Baloise, the team that supports young Flandrian talent coming through. And this is Giulio Massotti from Verona, the 23-year-old Italian for Team Corotec in the burgundy with the grey shorts. I do like that kit. It's just a nice colour, Robbie, isn't it? Smart-looking outfit, I think. I don't know what you think.
Yep, a nice sort of Bordeaux colour, or Queensland maroon, in fact. Yep. And people who are into their rugby league would be aware that the state that I was born in and live in, Queensland, they're the Maroons. It's our state colour.
There we go. This is Josh Kench, the Kiwi, 21-year-old for Bolton Equities Black Spoke in the purple and yellow. Next to come through is Bram Drissel, the Dutchman, 24-year-old for Beat Cycling Team, and his teammate just behind him, Vincent Hoppezak. And they have just behind them, sitting on the Beat Cycling boys, while Bram Drissel does a slightly longer turn than the others. That might be indicative of the way things are swinging with those two. Cyril Dessau, the tall figure of the Belgian, riding for Bingol Wallonie Bruxelles in the bright yellow and red. And then just to complete that rundown, Filippo Rodolfo right in the middle in those green-tipped shorts in the dark blue of Novo Nordisk, the Italian 21-year-old. Lots of youngsters in there, getting out front very early on today as well. really early on. This was the first breakaway to go, and it was perfectly formed, seemingly. All of Pro Team riders, and then that one Continental team have 2 riders in there in beat cycling. And just like that, the gap starts going out again. Another little cobbled, what would you call it? Little clinkers rattle.
This is the Broekstraat. So this is the circuit, Jez. This is that 1.7 kilometre section where Alexander Kristoff rode away and went solo last year. So there's 7 kilometres from the finish line, but they are on the circuit. So take a good look at these cobbles. This is what they'll be digesting another 3 times after this.
I have to say, Robbie, there's not a great deal of runoff to the left there, is there? If you're coming thundering into this in a big bunch, you suddenly go near one of those white posts. If you're going to miss it, you're going to have a watery ending, I'd have thought, in that little dike down there.
If you run out of room on the left, you could find yourself with wet boots and the rest. As you can see, it's fairly nice cobbles. They're nothing you could compare to the pavé of Paris-Roubaix. So Saturday and Sunday will look very, very different to this. So these are fairly smooth as far as cobbles go. But you can see that's why we've seen a sort of teams massing towards the front. Here's Astana on the left with Mark Cavendish just popping out so we can see him. And a lot of the other big-name sprinters, Fabio Jakobsen, just showing himself there too, because they all want to be towards the front as they now turn onto the Broekstraat and take on the cobbles as well.
Robbie, what are your thoughts about being in such a distinctive jersey, in amongst all those Astana team riders? If he's going to get a really well-drilled lead-out train, making the most of Cees Bol and Syriza and Martin Laas, if they look round and see that distinctive white jersey of the British champion, is that helpful in that team environment? And did it just make him a target for the other sprinters?
Well, I think it's definitely helpful. I always loved being in a champion jersey, my Australian champion jersey, for example, very distinctive as well, like the British one is. That Cav's wearing. It makes you stand out where your own teammates can find you really easily. It doesn't so much make you a target. Yes, everybody can see where you are, but it brings a certain level of respect as well. And riders, they make no mistake about who it is on their, next to them in the bunch or just in front of them. And I used to find it seems to get you a little bit more room, a little bit more respect. You're instantly recognisable. I always loved it.
That is interesting, right.
And you ask anyone who wears their national champions jersey, they will always say, it just gives me that extra little boost, that extra bit of confidence and desire, because you feel like you're not just representing your team, you're representing your country every single race day.
There we go. Former national champion, Robbie McEwen, alongside me, Jez Cox, as we bring you what is close to being now the final 50 kilometres. We're into the first of our finishing laps, these 3 17-kilometre closing circuits, traditional ones now in Schoten that have been settled on by this great race. And this is where what we expect to see, a great sprint finale, will be played out. There are still 7 riders out front, though, and still plenty of racing yet to come. There are teams in here, there's not many of them, but there are a few teams in here that don't have necessarily a sort of recognised sprint superstar that they can have full confidence in finishing things off. We're watching Fabio Jakobsen moving up the outside there, Robbie, in that European Champions jersey, making his way up by himself in company of Florian Sénéchal, ready to slot in and stay out of trouble, I expect. Yep,
just riding towards the front as they just swing on to that larger road along the edge or along the banks of the Albert Canal. So this is that long, straight section, wider road. There's one little kink in it. They go up a bridge, and so there's a jink to the left where if you get boxed in the left, you might have to touch the brakes and waste a bit of energy when you're that final 5 kilometres into the finish. So you see the Schelder Castle.
Very nice indeed. Yes, that little bridge they go up actually crosses the tributary to the Albert Canal, which takes them onto the Dessel-Schulten Canal, which goes northward from here. Both pretty big stretches of water and important industrial ones too. But as I say, not quite as big as the Schelder itself at its widest, biggest points as well.
Our landscape, your food, our future. So it's won by the farmers. Just making everybody aware that what they do is so very important, because it puts, Jez, the food on your plate.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We still are yet to dip below a minute. So it is as if these are being allowed to dangle a little bit. But it has to be said, Robbie, I think they're working quite well together, these guys as well. I haven't really noticed anyone doing soft turns or sitting in at the back. They seem to be working quite well together, those 7. Never had an enormous lead, though. We barely saw it go over 3 minutes. And the wind conditions today, almost too perfectly formed for being a nailed-on big sprint day. I can't see it ending any other way, Robbie, but you never know, do you? You never know. A little sneaky late move.
Yep, you do never know that someone could pull off a miraculous late move. They're going to, I think, have to have a rocket attached if they're going to pull it off. I'm pretty sure the sprinters will have their day. And just looking at the riding along the Albert Canal now and what you often see along the big canals in Europe, these riverboats are always fascinating to look at. And you'll see like the one on the right sitting well up and out of the water. And quite high, but when they're loaded up, the water's almost sort of lapping over the edges. I always was curious as to what each one is carrying, but it's a lot of the time it's a lot of grain gets transported along the canals in Belgium to things like scrap metal and soil, just waste when they've been doing the road works or doing demolitions, that sort of stuff. Stuff off to the steelworks, and some people just live on them and just cruise the canals and got bikes on board. They might have a car on the back they can lower off with a crane, and they just live on the river. Here's that jink I was talking about. This has actually been reconstructed over the last few years, and it's become a little bit more of a jink around to the left than it was before.
We can see the cycle path just down beneath them, of course, too narrow to take the entirety of the peloton on. I say too narrow, you could do it, but it would be a little bit dodgy. Do you know, I often wonder, Robbie, in parts of the world like this, where there are such prominent big bike races in Flanders, whether occasionally in the designing of the roads they ever think about, it sounds ridiculous, but think about or envisage these enormous races coming over their flyover, their turn into the town or wherever it is. There must be parts of mainland Europe where the road designers think like that. I'm absolutely certain. We're getting closer to the finish line, though. And this group of 7 are going to survive to the first passage of the finish line. They now have, there we go, for the first time today, 1 minute, 59 seconds, so it's coming down. It's almost as if this arrival at the finish line signals the end game as it is yet to be played out. Filippo Rodolfo picking up a bottle. I don't know whether he's got a loose bolt in his head unit there, his computer on the bike. I noticed this earlier, Robbie, but he has it pointing so far down. Now, I coach a few junior riders who ride with their bike computers like that, pointing down. They insist the reason is to get themselves more aero, so that in order to read it, you've got to get your nose like right over the front of the bars and really low. Honestly, and I keep saying to them, look, here's the Allen key, just move it back up so you can actually read it. No, it works. It funnels the air up and over your stem, over your head, so you're more aero, and you have to get more aero in order to read it. It is ridiculous, isn't it? Tell me it's ridiculous. Come on.
I guess if you believe it, then it helps. If you believe it, it's not a lie. 2K to go marker here. Okay, it's not 2K to go this time, but we'll already get quite a look at the finish. They're on the main road leading back into Schoorten. And you just saw those last couple of corners. Really quite tricky, narrow road after it. Then it widens again. But I'm just going to look out for, in another couple of 100 metres, there you go, just up ahead is this little chicane. Look how narrow it gets here. And think in terms of preparing for a bunch sprint with just over 1.5 kilometres to go. And then you get this. So really narrows down, and then it's a hard right through here, back around to the left. If you're out of position here, this is where your sprint ends. If you have to touch the brakes, you get squeezed. You're just happen to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, and that's why the fight's going to be so intense in the peloton, to be at the front early to get through a section like that and stay in position, stay at the front, and save your legs.
Looking down on Schoten, which once a year becomes the focal point of the best sprinters in our sport, as it did in Robbie's racing years, as it does now, and as it will do for many, many years to come, I suspect. Sitting in this neat position now in between Flanders and Roubaix, and it wasn't always like this, was it, Robbie? Originally, certainly back in the 20s and 30s, the race was, as we watched them coming towards the finish, the race was run in the summer heat. And now very much an important spring classic race. This is the run into the finish then.
Yeah, it's a difficult sprint to get right, Jez. You'll see as they come up ahead, the road just bends around to the left through that last sort of 500-600 metres, starts to bend around, and then there's a real bend in the road with just around 200 metres to go, or just outside, depending exactly where they place the line. But it's not a completely straight run in, and you can actually get yourself sort of trapped on the left-hand side most often because the peloton wants to take the shortest way. They ride the inside of the bend. So mostly it tends to open up on the right-hand side, and this is the spot where this concrete bit sticks out. This is where the sprint's got to kick in. You see them just that bend inside 200, and a lot of riders wait until they sort of come out of the bend and see the finish to make their full effort. But if you can hit that bend going absolutely full, the line comes up very, very quickly. So a lot of riders get it wrong because they just don't start their sprint on time. Even if they've been through the finish 3 times before on this lap, they still make a mess of it because they're not willing to go full out until they can actually see the line, which sounds a bit nuts, but it's some people just ride visually where others go, no, I know that as soon as they come out of that bend, it's there, and they're the ones who get it right and win the race.
This will sound like an odd question, Robbie, but I mean, I'm guessing a chicane like that is completely different when ridden at speed with the other riders elbow to elbow around you to how it might be maybe the first time you go through it like this. Yes, they're tightly packed, but they're not absolutely ripping through there, and it will feel radically different going through that chicane in the final sprint. So I guess even though it's the same stretch of road, it's the pacing along it will feel quite different.
Yeah, well, when they're going 70k an hour at the finish, what you tend to see is the riders fanning out from left to right, like they're really taking a corner. It's just such a slight bend, but at that speed, at full sprint, you do tend to sort of fan out, and everyone's trying to come around on the right-hand side, and the shortest way is on the inside left. So there's only one way to go, so the riders all sort of trying to, if they're going to move up, you're going around on the right, and they fan across the road.
Caleb Ewan right at the back with 2 or 3 of his teammates too, as well as we watch the peloton come across the line. Robbie, I really want to make the opportunity to pick your thoughts on this, because there'll be lots of people watching who ride bikes. There'll be lots of people watching who race bikes or who have raced bikes. There'll be amateurs, weekend warriors, pros, and leisure riders all watching as well. What is it like when you're up to? Just tell us what's it like when you're up to that very high speed in a very fast-moving pack. You're 2 or 3 rows back anyway, trying to move your way through. To the vast majority of people, their survival tactics say, no, back off, I'm way too close, I feel nervous. How do you get yourself through that? And particularly if, like you all have at some point, you've had a couple of crashes, you know what it feels like to suddenly see everything lock up in front of you. How do you shut that out? And I know you hear people say, oh, you just block it out. What's your way of doing it, and how does it feel?
Well, start from before you've had a crash, for example, and under normal circumstances, it's just that desperation of knowing the only way I can win, the only way I can meet my objective is to go forwards, go through that gap, force my way to the front. And I used to have a sort of a mentally flick a switch and say, from sort of 10k out, now it's game time, and I'd go into just another zone in my head. And I had almost this sense of invincibility where nothing bad can happen to me because I'm going to get it right. And the others are going to get out of the way. If they don't get out of the way, I'm going to get them out of the way. And I'm going to keep moving forward and just hitting every gap. But it does inevitably happen that you are involved in a crash. And I've crashed in the bunch sprint in the Schelder Pass before. I think it was 2009. Quite a big one, like full speed bunch sprint went down. Alessandro Petacchi won that year. After a crash, it is more difficult to get yourself in that zone and take those same risks. It takes a little while to get the feeling back, and you can find yourself sometimes backing off where in the weeks before that you would have been pushing through. And that is mentally the toughest thing as a sprinter, to be competitive again after you've had a nasty crash. even if you come away relatively unscathed, just a bit of skin off, it's really hard to throw yourself back amongst it with full confidence, and you sort of got to build it again. And it's only the really special ones who can just get back on the next day and just do it again, and believe that it won't happen again.
Fascinating insight from Robbie McEwen there. Winner of this race, as I say, in 2002. Let me very quickly, if you have only just recently joined us, let me quickly talk you through every winner since Robbie McEwen won his schelder prijs back in 2002. Ludovic Capella was the winner the next year, the first of 2 Belgian winners in a row. Tom Bonen was the next to them in 2004. Thorwald Venneberg was the, I think, a single Dutch winner. There wasn't another Dutch winner until Fabio Jakobsen won it again in 2018. Bonen was the winner again in 2006. Mark Cavendish had 2 wins in a row in 2007, 2008. Then it was Pataki, Tyler Farrar and Mark Cavendish again in 2011. After Cav in 2011, Marcel Kittel had 5 wins that were separated only by 1 winner. In 2015, it was Alexander Kristoff getting the first of his 2 wins, of course. Kittel was the winner from 2012 through to 2017. Fabio Jakobsen won it twice in a row, 2018, 2019, during that period in which we thought he was going to be the big dominant world sprinter in the years to come. Of course, he had that awful crash in the Tour of Poland that slowed that. And of course, others have emerged around him during that time. Caleb Ewan was the winner in 2020 in the COVID lockdown edition, where it was run at the end of the year. And Jasper Philipsen was the winner in 2021. Alexander Kristoff last year. That was every winner all the way through from 2002, which seems like only yesterday, Robbie. But it's quite a while ago now, isn't it?
21 years ago.
Crazy, eh?
Of legal drinking age anywhere in the world.
So Tim de Klerk has just switched off. Momentarily, he'll be back on the front imminently. He and Marco Haller have probably done the longest turns so far at the front, and we can already see plenty of sprinters just finding their place near the front. Mark Cavendish, maybe because of that national champions jersey, the British champions jersey, very prominent and evident at the front end today. So he is without doubt up for it. Robbie?
And he tends to track the Soudal Quick-Step team a lot. His former
interesting
teammates. He knows reliable wheels to follow. He's used to it. And he knows as they're riding for Fabio Jakobsen, they're going to be doing the exact right thing that suits Mark Cavendish as well. And he just plonks himself on the wheel and sits himself. And he looks like he is planning to ride this circuit from the front. It's only 46k to go. There are some nice long open stretches like they're on now, but there's some more tricky sections and corners where you have to brake and re-accelerate. And if you can stay up the front, you do give yourself a much easier ride than those who are sitting mid-pack or down the back like we saw Caleb Ewan doing before. And they could potentially give themselves a lot more work to do to get back up to the front of the bunch. Another one of the incredible castles, the Pulhof Kasteel in Schoten. And this part of the world, I mean, they're just some incredible architecture.
Well, we are in
hundreds of years old.
We are in Flanders. We've made our way through the North Brabant, having exited South Zeeland, where we started earlier. And as Robbie says, we're into some beautiful castle countryside here. That would be one for my paddleboard, Robbie, actually. When I retire from my illustrious and well-earning commentary career, I'm going to buy me one of them. I've already got the paddleboard. I just need the castle and the moat.
Just need the castle. You just need the moat. Okay. Maybe you could start with just going on the Albert Canal.
Oh yes, that would do it. Actually, do you know what? That would be a cracking paddle. Or to take in maybe the whole of the Schelder all the way through Belgium on a paddleboard. I don't know how long it would take actually. I mean, by bike along the canal towpath. How long? That's not.
Depends if you get dragged under and just towed along by one of those riverboats.
I'll give it a good go. I'm yet to fall off my paddleboard. I discovered paddleboarding this time last year and keep waffling on about it every now and again on air. It's my newfound love. Yet to fall off. It'll happen at some point, probably when I'm being passed by, as you say, some sort of canal boat or something. Actually, the canals in the United Kingdom are pretty good for paddleboarding as well. We look down on... go on, you can say that, Robbie. Click-cute. Click-cute.
Kegkurt.
Oh, there we go. Very nice. No moat, though. Oh, actually, no, I say that. It has got a little bit of a... I think we're looking at an inner...
It's another terrace out the back. Oh, that's the inner, yeah. Oh, well, it's got a what they call a gracht running along the front, which separates the entry from the roadway.
Keep the riffraff out. There you go. We've got a golf cart alongside it as well. Perfect appendage to such an establishment as this. Lovely. Very nice indeed. And all the while, the gap just comes down by just a tiny number of seconds at any one point. 45 seconds now, the gap between the front end of our peloton and the 7 riders out front as they continue around this opening lap of our finishing circuit. 17 kilometres in total. And it won't be too long before they rattle back onto the clinkers again on Broekstraat for the second time. Might even get a point here. Opportunity for the breakaway to stay away for another whole lap. It might yet happen. We will see. Jaco Alula, do not forget, thinking very much about Dylan Groenewegen, one of a big collection of big sprinters.
You know what I really like about the races of Flanders Classics, Jez? That includes Gent-Wevelgem, the Ronde van Vlaanderen, the Schelder Prijs, the Brussels Classic, formerly Paris-Brussels. Their safety measures on the road, on the race route. You just saw that the person giving the moto rider, the marshal, giving the signals. But at the traffic islands, it's no longer just someone with a flimsy little flag and a whistle, hoping that the riders will be able to see them. See the big yellow things? Looks like a portable toilet.
Yes.
They are put specifically there so the riders that they are high enough that the riders can see them over the peloton, and you're then avoiding those nasty accidents we sometimes see in races where suddenly a traffic island jumps up and bites someone. You put those together with the other measures they've taken, like at the finish. If you notice the next time through, the finish barriers are no longer the metal barriers with the feet that stick out. They are really streamlined, large, quite high plastic barricades that do not come apart if they're crashed into. And the riders, they're on an angle, so if you did happen to crash and hit the barriers, you slide back down it and onto the road. You don't go through the barrier, you don't go over the barrier. And also the crowds can't infiltrate the course. They can't hang over, they can't reach with an arm and reach over and say hit the riders as they come past. So you've got the full width of the road to use right up to the barriers, where in other races you can't do that because you risk just being hit by the crowd, hitting the foot of a barrier. So these safety measures they've taken and implemented and invented are just a great thing. And I think they honestly should be the norm in every race on the calendar. This is how cycling races should be set up for the safety of the riders. It's not compulsory yet, but it should be.
No, I agree with you, Robbie. It's very much a Flanders Classic thing, and I think it's nice to see a race organiser innovating in such a way which must be costly, but purely for the rider's safety. It's not something that's going to get them necessarily more viewers on TV or anything like that. It is literally for the riders, so it must be a good thing for sure. It's Beauplan, I believe, is the company that make them, and it's not just, as you say, the finishing barriers either. It's all around the course. I don't know whether, just one little thought on that, Robbie. In a Flanders Classic race, because you're used to seeing them, I guess to a certain extent you've got to be sort of, certainly on a finishing circuit like this, you've got to be all in and make sure you're covering all of the central reservations and what have you, because otherwise the riders, is there a danger that the riders come to expect to see it, and because if one isn't covered, if they haven't seen it, you've got to keep your wits about you anyway, right? But it's almost like an all or nothing thing, particularly on a finishing circuit like this.
Yeah, it is. It's particularly for those central traffic islands that, if the riders are used to seeing, okay, there's going to be a great big yellow plastic structure, I'll be able to pick it out from a distance, and then there isn't one. So you see another one just there. But they have got them all around this circuit. The only place they do have those sort of old-style metal barricades is a little bit further along this stretch along the canal, where they do that jink around to the left. But it's just to show the riders that they're not sort of able to go further out to the right, and they're not really sticking out or at a critical part of the course, and nowhere near the where they'll be mixing it up, getting in position for the sprint.
You know, Robbie, a fascinating thing looking at the back of this group here, and bike design, frame design moves on and changes all the time. We're watching 7 riders in the breakaway, right? Every single one of the bikes in this breakaway, despite the fact that all but 2 of them are all different makes. We have a De Rosa here, and Eddie Merckx just beyond it, and then different manufacturers. Every single one of them has those heavily dropped seat stays. It's something that's still relatively new in frame design, and yet seems to have been adopted. And I'm wondering whether there's any rider in this field at all that is riding on a bike that doesn't have those dropped seat stays, you know, much lower down, just above the back wheel. It seems to be the only way now for frame design. I don't know if you've noticed that.
I haven't actually noticed it until you brought it up, and now I won't be able to unsee it when I'm looking. That's what you mean there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Looking, of course, at Mathieu van der Poel here, former multiple Dutch national champion, the world cyclocross champion 2 times over, 3 times over, I think. Certainly the winner in Hoogerheide. They passed where that happened, or earlier in the course today, of course. There he is near the back. But here to just sharpen the legs a little ahead of Paris-Roubaix at the weekend, his big target of the spring after that incredible win in Milan-San Remo, wasn't it, Robbie? I mean, you couldn't think of 2 more different races. There I am talking about him being the world cyclocross champion from back in January, but then winning Milan-San Remo and then targeting Paris-Roubaix. Can you think of 3 more different races than that? Yes, you're riding on drop handlebars for all 3 of them, but the world cyclocross champs, Milan-San Remo, Paris-Roubaix, it's just highlights in a way how wonderfully multifaceted our sport is.
Yeah, it does. And some people might say, well, cyclocross and Roubaix, I mean, the surface is pretty similar. Yes, maybe, but a completely different style of effort. 1 hour cyclocross compared to 6 hour Roubaix. So the gap now down to 52 seconds with 39 kilometres to race. And everybody fairly relaxed still in the peloton. But I think that's what's going to make this race the most difficult. The fact that it's been a really easy ride. Everybody in the peloton, except for those who have been doing the chasing on the front and those who have been off the front in the break, they're the only ones that are going to have any sort of real fatigue. Everybody who's just been sitting in the wheels are going to be completely fresh. And there's going to be not just the top sprinters that we've run through who'll be fancying their chances, but just everybody who feels like, well, I still feel pretty good. I think I can get amongst it. It's going to get very, very crowded at the front, and it's going to be an extremely high-speed affair through the final lap of this race. It's yet to really kick off and get hard, and that won't actually suit some riders. Although Jasper Philipsen, he would be one of the top favourites in any case, however it plays out. I would imagine, based on his current form and how he's been winning this season, that he would actually like it if the race was a little bit harder, if it was going fast from a long way out, even if there was a bit of wind, which there won't be today. Ideal conditions. As we just see Hugo Hofstetter from the Arkea Samsic team, a Frenchman been really consistent in the bunch sprints, a number of top 10s over the last couple of seasons, and he'll be looking to take some big scalps this afternoon.
There we are now, well, still settled at around that 45-second mark, back along the Albert Canal, southward, going westward, I should say, on the southern part of our finishing circuit.
Oh,
hello.
Just nature break.
Well, there's a confident
man.
Away. Thankfully, we cut away just in time there, but confident man there to lighten the load slightly, should we say, before the final build-up to the sprint. He won't be too worried about getting back in by the looks of it. It did look like he'd stopped by himself as well, Robbie.
Yeah, it did. And Jez, while you just had ducked out, I was just saying that everybody's going to be so fresh. I mean, look how narrow this corner is. This used to be a much wider corner through this section away from the canal. I was just saying, when you ducked out, that there'll be some riders in this peloton. There'll be riders who, the obvious ones, our sprinters and their lead-out man, they're going to be at the front. But there'll be so many riders feeling really fresh. Hardly made an effort so far today, just ridden the distance, but all in the wheels, no winds, no big attacks, and no high speed. Where it's been really on, be a lot of fresh riders. There'd be maybe some like Jasper Philipsen, who actually would have preferred it to be a lot harder race. It sort of eliminates quite a bit of the field before you get to the nitty-gritty.
Yeah, and there are teams, as I mentioned earlier, there are some teams in there who, well, unless they were in the breakaway, the teams who've had a rider in the breakaway today at least have been out there in the front, and they're not caught just yet. That's if they are to be caught. We presume they will be. There's a certain certainty about that, but they are at least out there. But maybe there's some other teams as well who, how do I say this, haven't got quite the sprinter of the calibre of a Fabio Jakobsen, Alexander Kristoff, Jasper Philipsen. I'm thinking about teams like Q36.5 maybe. Now they've got Matteo Moschetti, who's already won this year. We know he's a good sprinter on his day. He's a top 10 man today. But there are teams like that maybe who might have an opportunity to try something a bit different if they can find any opportunity to try something late on, little late moves. Is there a chance? I mean, I know, because there's so many teams wanting to use their strength in numbers to work for their sprinter, Robbie, but when there's such a certainty about the sprint, does that ever mean that there's even more an opportunity for this sort of unexpected late move when there's an easing in and out of a corner, something like that, even if it's just to get out there and give it a go?
I tend to think that there's just no. I just think there's so many riders in a position to be able to do their job to the fullest. There's been nothing to really fatigue anyone. I mean, there's still a lot can still happen. 35k to go as things start to ramp up, and that battle becomes more intense to be at the front with the whole team. There's just not room for everybody up there, and we could see that the heat turned up, and that's tricky section I was talking about just before, where they do that sort of right-left chicane, really narrow, and that is going to be one of the really important markers on the run in towards the finish with 2k to go, to get through there in a good position, so you're not looking to try and move back up when things are really accelerating and then the lead-outs are going into full swing.
Uno X now moving up with Alexander Kristoff with those former European champion stripes, second wheel there, and gosh, it's a strong team that Uno X have. Not least, and one of the most impressive things, Robbie, is the fact that they are still absolutely set on that team always at the moment, being made up of Danish and Norwegian riders only. Not only because of the way their sponsorship works, and the sponsors, Uno X, are petrol stations across Norway and Denmark. But they're pretty set on there being an entirely Norwegian and Danish team, and of course that's what they have here today. But they have some big, strong rouleurs in there, the likes of Søren Wernskjold and Christopher Halvorsen, two of their Norwegian riders, who will be very, very handy in keeping Alexander Kristoff well protected. Kofidis in the middle as well. We can't miss Max Walscheid sitting second wheel there. They've got a couple of options, Robbie, as well. I'm increasingly impressed by Piet Allegaert, the 28-year-old Kofidis rider. He's a slightly below the radar sprinter, but very capable as well. I wouldn't be surprised to see him top 10, top 15 today, Piet Allegaert as well. I suspect probably Max Walscheid is their preferred man, having been second in this race a couple of years ago too.
Yeah, I think that Piet Allegaert would be the lead-out man for Max Walscheid. Walscheid would be their preferred sprinter. I think if it really came to a showdown between the two, that Walscheid just has a little bit more in the tank than Allegaert. We'll see when it comes down to it.
Now, the other team that I find fascinating, thinking about their chances today, is Trek Segafredo as well, Robbie, because you mentioned Ed Turns earlier, and he is slightly, for me, we're watching Jasper Philipsen just calmly working his way back in there. He's back in amongst the cars. Doesn't seem to be any panic, does there?
None.
None at all, which is good. Just getting back to Trek Segafredo, though, Edward Turns, one of those riders who's capable of turning in brilliant sprints every now and again, but he's another of those slightly below the radar riders as well, who's actually, when you look at his palmares and his pedigree over the last 5 or 6 years, incredibly good. In this race, he's been really good as well. 2nd, 4th and 5th. Previously, in fact, he was second to Alexander Kristoff when Kristoff won the sprint edition in 2015. He's actually a really top sprinter, Ed Turns. It's just that maybe he's lacking that really, really big win or sort of prominent performance. Maybe it's sprinting in Grand Tours or something like that, Robbie. I don't know what you think, that elevates you into that status of a true sprinting great. But I don't think too many people would necessarily pick Edward Turns as one of those big sprinters, and yet his results point at just how good he is.
No, he's got good results. He's a guy who's wily enough and strong enough to get himself into a good position and follow wheels. He's not necessarily a guy who has the out-and-out power to take on the best of the best in a head-to-head sprint, come off the wheel and pass them. But on a good day, if things go just right, he's been able to jag wins here and there throughout his career. And he's been riding well this season. He was second in Nulkert, of course, that uphill cobbled sprint behind Tim Merlier.
The Vordenstein Orangery. Now, I can tell you, Robbie, that is where... No, please, don't interrupt, because I've got a fact. That is where they grow oranges. I tell you what, that would be an absolute nightmare to tend, wouldn't it? Don't tell me there's just one gardener working on all that lot. Some of it looks like it may have gone a little fallow as well, and you can understand that maybe. That's a big plot, isn't it? Wow. A whole lot of oranges coming out of there.
Absolutely zero oranges.
You're probably right. Now you're going to tell me what is... That's not an orange.
We'd have to go and commentate on something in Valencia if you want oranges.
Oh, dear. Well, the breakaway are clinging on to 30 seconds right now. And we're well into the second of our laps now as well. So they are hanging on, and they're going to hang on possibly deeper than we might have expected as well, as they head back towards the Broekstraat Klinkers for the penultimate time. We're ripping through these.
You know, Jez, I think it's this break, although the peloton are chasing, I think they are going to hang on maybe longer than we expected, because the sprint teams, they don't want to sacrifice anybody else to do the chasing. They don't need to close it down any quicker than they are. They only need to get them by the finish and not really long before it. So they're trying to let the guys who've been doing the chasing all race long try and let them finish the job in their own time. As long as they catch them somewhere in the last lap, everything will be fine. And then they can spare that extra guy they might need to set their lead out from a little bit further out, keep their sprinter in a good position. So you've really got all hands on deck.
Robbie McEwen there alongside me, Jez Cox, as we bring you the final 30 kilometres of this, the oldest Flemish Spring Classic, Schelder Prijs, the 109th edition in this Paris-Roubaix week, the week between Flanders and Roubaix. Here we are sitting right in the middle of it, in glorious sunshine of the north of Flanders, having crossed over from the Netherlands. This peloton of 142 riders. The women's race has already finished today. You did see a little spoiler of it in the right-hand side of your screen a little earlier. I won't tell you any more about it, other than that you can watch the whole thing back on the GCN app, and you can see highlights of the closing stages of it already as well. So go and check that one out, maybe a little bit later on. Don't forget as well, you can catch up with the Zulia Basque Country stage. What are we up to now? Stage 3, I think, today, finishing on Saturday. Carlton Kirby and Brian Smith bringing you that all the way through the wonderfully varied Zulia Basque Country.
Oh, that was close. See that on the right-hand side? One of the Bora riders just got himself off the edge. Nearly lost the front wheel. Managed to haul it back in and keep himself upright.
I also think, Robbie, we may have just seen Gerben Thijssen also on the cycle path, making his way back onto the road there. Looked like his build, certainly one of the Entermarché Circus Wanty riders.
Well, for a few years, Jez, that's been a big no-no, riding on, well, definitely on footpaths. But that often the footpath includes the cycle path, they're shared paths, and seen riders pulled out of races or disqualified from races because of it. And it's a contentious issue at the moment after the other day in the Ronde van Vlaanderen, that big crash that was caused by Meerschuk.
Yes, yep.
Who was disqualified.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if there's been any further to that, if he's had any further sanction or not. I think the disqualification on the day was enough, to be honest.
Well, again, that harks back, I think, a little bit, Robbie, to what you were talking about, the blocking of the road and the DSM riders as well in A3, wasn't it, I think? Or was that Flanders? No, it was Flanders, sorry. It was Flanders.
Flanders.
Yeah.
That was Flanders.
I think there was talk that the front end of the peloton was being blocked a little bit anyway, and he was one of those riders riding for Bahrain Victorious that was trying to move up on the outside. And he was moving up on a little bit of, in fact, not cycle path, it was kind of like parking area that suddenly turned green. And then the green became a bog, of course, and he turned back across. I mean, if you haven't seen it, I suspect most of the people watching will have seen that. It was a really nasty... I must admit, I'm sure he will have... I mean, no one wants to do that to their fellow riders at all. I think from the shot that we're looking at, it looks probably more clumsy than it is. It's quite easy at that speed to overcorrect.
It was lack of experience and poor judgment. So we'll leave it at that.
Yeah. There we go. Front wheel change for one of the human-powered health riders. This is Alan Banaszek. Good to see Banaszek signed up by this team. Really experienced Polish rider. Has won an awful lot of races back in his home country as well, Banaszek, and has had the opportunity this year to step up to the pro team level with human-powered health, and I think he'll be a very useful foil, particularly alongside Stanislav Anielewski, his countryman, who's also on that team now as well. Two really strong Polish riders there, riding for human-powered health, the American team. Lots of nutrition being taken on from the riders at the front. Last year's winner, Alexander Kristoff, in that very aero helmet at Uno X now. It's an almost fully faired helmet. It's almost like a ski helmet that he wears, isn't it, Robbie? Right in the middle of the shot.
Well, you'd almost want to be wearing a full-face helmet for racing the schelder press. So with this many top sprinters, and you can see now that the teams are getting into their blocks and starting to push more towards the front. We saw DSM in the black on that on the right-hand side of the road, left of screen as we look back at them, riding for Sam Welsford, just starting to move themselves up more and get to the front and take a little bit of control over this race. And so the break now is squeezing every last bit out that they've still got in the tank, getting down, getting aero. I'd like to see them really throw it down as hard as they can, full team time trial style, and even see riders prepared to go overboard to blow up, just trying to make it work. I mean, the chances are so slim, near to none, that they'll stay away, but I'd love to see them make it as hard as possible.
Robbie, you mentioned Sam Welsford there. Not only does he have one of the most fantastic tashes in men's, I think in men's cycling, in cycling in general, he's got a wonderful tash. But listen, Aussie sprinter, very exciting rider. Tell me about Sam Welsford. What are your thoughts? Exciting?
Sam
Excited
Welsford,
for him?
Yeah, really exciting. I mean, he's been a track specialist throughout his career and been more successful, not just on the track, but in sort of short road races, flat road races, criteriums, but really taken a big step up over the last two seasons and in particular since the start of this season. And I've seen him race Commonwealth Games on the track and watch him not only in the team pursuit, where he's quite incredible, but he won the Commonwealth Games scratch race, and it was just ridiculous from how far behind he came, the speed that he generated, and just whipped them. And I thought then, that was in 2018, I thought if he can translate that to the road as an endurance track rider, make the step, and he has. And he's showing that speed, and he's a guy who, he's also had his share of crashes. He is not afraid of anyone or anything.
Excellent. Right, we will watch out for Sam Welsford. You can't miss him.
Makes him a worthy adversary.
Yeah, and he kind of fits the mould of the archetypal Hulk-like road sprinter as well, doesn't he, Robbie? There's nothing of the whippet about him. He's a big, powerful guy. Exciting to watch.
He's almost as wide as he is tall. He's really broad-shouldered, and he cuts a strong figure on the bike. And there they are, just on the left of screen in the black, DSM. It's still at the front. Alpecin, Soudal Quickstep leading the chase. And Max Walscheid, he's really pushing forward with his teammates, the Cofidis riders, to stay in position as they cross the Broekstraat on the cobbles for the second last time.
Yeah, this is the penultimate passage, as Robbie says. Looking at the very back of the field here. Bert van Leerberghe there for Soudal Quickstep, who were already one man down at the beginning of the day because Casper Pedersen, the Dane, the big strong Dane, who I thought would have been a really useful foil for them today, he was out. Bert van Leerberghe sitting at the back. We've seen lots of Tim de Klerk at the front, of course, for Soudal Quickstep. DSM, as Robbie said there, in the black, moving up in the middle. They have three strong options today, actually, Robbie. Not least, of course, in Casper Van Uden, who was fourth last year. He hung on, actually, having led out Sam Welsford, who was third, and actually came fourth in the end, Casper Van Uden. They had third and fourth last year, DSM. But they also have Alberto Dainese as well, another guy who's fast come and finished like this. Not quite a big bunch sprinter, but a fast man nonetheless. So they have some options, DSM.
Yeah, well, on his day, he can wrap everyone up. Dainese, he won that stage in the Giro d'Italia last year. It was actually the first Italian win of the Giro. I think they had to wait, was it 15 or 17 days until they got a stage win in the Giro last year. It was Dainese that got it, and he was incredibly quick. Found his way through the chaos and to the front. So I'll be interested to see if he rides his own sprint or tries to lead out Welsford.
Robbie, I've just noticed Mathieu van der Poel leading up a string of three on the left-hand side of the screen. He's got Jonas Wickart just behind him, and on his wheel, Jasper Philipsen as well. So potentially there is the order of that lead out. We were talking about it earlier, wouldn't we, whether Mathieu van der Poel would be the last man to go. It looks like it might be Wickart as we watch the breakaway now being caught.
Well, at least three of them.
Three of them, that's true. That leaves four. Four still out front. I think that's the first three to be caught, if I'm not mistaken, unless the other four have been caught just out of shot there. But we are now coming into that moment where we will be seeing a regrouping and a change in the end game and the way this is going to be played out over the next 23 kilometres. It is still, if that is the breakaway, there we go, we've still got four out front, Robbie. Catching them with 20k to go does leave the door open a little bit for any of those skirmishes that I was teasing at and hoping for earlier in terms of there being another little breakaway to bring back. There is, with 20k to go, there's a little bit more of an opportunity of that, would you say?
There is certainly an opportunity, but this race is just so stacked with top sprinters and teams completely built around them that I'm sceptical of the chances of anybody to really pull it off or be a huge threat. But you do never know, and maybe it will come as a late one, maybe the last time across the Broekstraat on the cobbles for an acceleration by a team who maybe don't have a sprinter at all or don't have one of the big name sprinters and really try and cause an upset by making acceleration there.
So four riders remaining out front with 22k to go, a lap and a half to go of our finishing circuit effectively. The four riders still out front, Cyril Dessau and Ruben Apers, the two Belgian riders in the company of the Dutchman Bram Dissel, and Filippo Rodolfo, the Italian, for the Novo Nordisk team. And these are the big sprint teams, the expected sprint teams with their protected riders all ready to go. DSM on the left. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of the DSM riders there as well. Sam Welsford sits second wheel. And just further back, I can see the really big, powerfully built Gleb Syriza of Astana, Kazakhstan there on the right-hand side of your shot. He's like a bear on a bike, isn't he, Robbie? He really is a big guy. He first came to my attention in last year's Arctic Race of Norway. Incredible sprinting up there, sprinting from often quite a badly placed position and riding right up to the outside of all the... I mean, it wasn't a sprint field quite as well formed as this, but he really impressed me in that race in a very raw and kind of rugged way.
Yeah, raw and rugged is a good explanation. He's a big, strong unit, Gleb Syriza. And if you can just get a bit of open road, he can exploit that big power. He makes me think of the type of rider like Marcel Kittel. Just gets up and just stamps on it so hard, just drops massive watts. I mean, he's a big guy. He has to drop huge watts to hold those high speeds because he is such a big unit, catches a lot of wind. But that's the perfect recipe to launch another big guy like Kees Bol and Mark Cavendish behind that, sitting in the slipstream. If they can just get themselves in the right position and make sense of the chaos, which there is most certainly going to be on the run in, and everybody will be getting this time through, taking another good look at it. You come to the end of this road along the canal. The road's already narrowed right down. There's plenty of works going along around here, and it's a really tight right-hand turn here. It's when they're going at speed, you only get through there with a couple wide when they're carrying a bit more speed the last time through. And this is a difficult section to get right as well. You can really get caught out through this sort of little residential area as they come away from the canal. A couple of speed humps, and there's another tighter turn in this as well. They turn away to the right before they hit the big road on the way back into Scorton. And of course, with that sort of chicane, that right-left, which tightens right down around 2K to go, inside 2K to go. So this is that general repetition, going through with the team again. Where do we want to hit it? This is where we want to go. We want to string it out here. See, this is that other little bit, other left, right. And at this point in the race, the next time through, with just 3K to go at this point, it's a case of it's not a hugely tight corner or anything like that, but if you have to just dab the brakes, you're going to lose yourself 15, 20 positions, and they're positions that are so difficult to make back up, and it's going to cost you a lot of energy.
Oh, yes. We have got teams up in colour order, as Robbie mentioned, but there's also a little bit of a merging of the 1s and 2s who are on the front. We still have 4 riders clear who have 21 seconds of lead. Cyril Dessel, Ruben Apers, Filippo Rodolfo and Bram Dissel getting closer to hitting the line when the bell goes off as well. And don't they know it, because things are getting a little bit more twitchy at the front as well. Alpecin de Koning moving up on the right-hand side of the screen, bringing up Jasper Philipsen on the back of that string. Man in such good form as well. And they're merging with Soudal Quickstep in the middle, Uno X off to the left, and then DSM, who are doing very well at holding their form together as well.
As you said, we'd see Bora Hansgrohe, we'd see DSM, Astana, Jaco Alula, Quickstep, and I was just going to say I haven't seen Lotto yet, and as if on cue, there they appear on the left-hand side of picture.
Caleb Ewan, of course, their protected rider today, the winner of this edition, this race, just once in 2020. And if this is the Sprinters World Championship, and today it definitely is the Sprinters World Championship on this day. Of course, there's so many arguments to be had about that one, Robbie. We won't go there right now with 20k to go. What was the big one-day sprint classic of the year? But Schelder Prijs is right up there, isn't it? And
when you look at the strength of the field, I mean, we thought we were going to get this sort of scenario the other week in Brugge de Panne, but we didn't due to the weather conditions. It was blowing a hoolie, it was pouring rain, it was freezing cold. Now, no excuses, perfect conditions for everybody. You'd argue that you could not get better racing conditions than 13 degrees and sunny. You're not going to overheat, you're not going to dehydrate, you're not going to get too cold either. It's just absolutely perfect racing weather.
Well, these 4 are going to survive to the line. They're going to survive to the bell, the final time, and the final 17-kilometre lap, 17.4-kilometre lap to be fair. And they've done well, these 4, after the last 3. The remaining 3 from the breakaway were fed back in. There's the bell being rung. Final lap for Cyril Dessel, Ruben Apers, Filippo Rodolfo and Bram Dissel. This is the final lap of the 109th edition of the Schelder Prijs, with me, Jez Cox, and Robbie McEwen, as we bring home all these riders. The catch of that breakaway seemingly imminent on this closing lap, and some of the best sprinters in the world ready to sharpen their elbows and get on with it. One of the teams we haven't seen at the front too much yet, Robbie, is Entomache Circus Wanty. Bearing in mind they have Gerben Thijssen in very good form and easily capable, if he's in the right place, of win. I say easily, it's never easy, but capable of winning this, I'd have thought. And it would be another step up in that talented 24-year-old's career, but he'd have a battle on his hands. But we haven't seen anything of Antomache Circus-Wanty yet getting involved in this at the front. And dare I say it, they've got Julius Johansson there, the Dane, who's easily capable of stringing this out. It's not necessarily their strongest sprint team this week. I know they've got Boy Van Poppel there as well, who's got all that experience and firepower to add.
Well, the other man who's a fast sprinter in his own right is Arne Marit, number 34 from the Antomache team. Come from the Top Sport Vlaanderen setup, the Baloise team in the past, and he's a guy who, with a good run, would also be comfortably inside the top 10, so he could be a good lead-out man for Tassen.
Just like that, as soon as I say it, Antomache Circus-Wanty moving up. There's about 3 or 4 of their riders very close to the front now.
It's like a moment ago I said, well, I haven't seen Lotto. There they are.
There we go. I think they're listening. You know what it's like, Robbie. We have great. Our reach is far deeper than we even realise, and maybe some of the sport directors are listening to us and getting on the radio.
And sometimes we just jinx it.
There we go. Liam Schlock, right at the back here for Lotto Destiny. One of those who, if he is going to be helping out Caleb Ewan, is going to have to move up again. I think he's one of those we've already seen doing a bit. Yes, there we go. There we go. We can afford him that, or I can afford him that, sitting at the back. Let's see if all of his hard work at the front is going to tell for Caleb Ewan. It's a fascinating mix of top sprinters we have. Let me run down the names again. Fabio Jakobsen, Alexander Kristoff, Jasper Philipsen, Mark Cavendish, Jordi Meijers, Gerben Thijssen, Max Walscheid, Sam Welsford, Caleb Ewan, Edward Thurns, amongst some of the big names, including Dylan Groenewegen as well. I nearly missed him out. Danny Van Poppel, why not? And a few others as well. Lots of pre-race press, Robbie, was all about Mathieu van der Poel in this week between Flanders and Roubaix, deciding to add this race to his programme. Whether it was a last-minute thing or not, we don't know. But he is here to work for Jasper Philipsen, and well, we'll see how much of a part he plays in Philipsen's endgame in this race.
I'm curious with that one, Jez, with Mathieu van der Poel, obviously wanting to get the race with him, wanting to help the team, see if he can help Jasper Philipsen to the win. But how much risk does he want to take on a circuit like this, on a run-in like this, with so many top sprinters? And they won't be looking and going, oh, with Mathieu van der Poel, I'm just going to give him some extra room. No way. I just wonder what his appetite for risk is in a race like this, considering that Roubaix is on Sunday. Yeah, it must weigh on the mind a little bit. We may see him function in the lead out a little bit further forward instead of being last man. He might go a little bit earlier, help them in position through that little chicane inside 2K to go, and then get himself to safety.
I guess there's an incentive for him to then, go a little bit harder. We know how strong he is, but if he can get himself clear of the other, like he is here, if we can see him going earlier, getting clear of the other riders, he then only has to lay down the megawatts, swing off, and he's out of trouble, isn't he? So here we go. Well, maybe we're going to see that.
For example, now he's already on the front of his team, so it may not be the lead out, like we were saying. Do the work early, get the team set up and in position, and then get himself out of harm's way. And I think that is the right choice, seeing that his biggest goal of the season is on Sunday. He'd love to help, but he wants to get to the starting compagnie in the best condition possible. That means with all his skin.
Biggest goal of the road season. I can hear the cyclocross fans kicking off, Robbie. I know what they're like. The cyclocross
season just finished, and he hit that goal. I'm not even going to talk about the next season yet.
Already, there's a few riders bouncing off people down there as well. Gerben Thijssen, it was, in actual fact, bouncing off the Jaco Alula train. We've already seen him the wrong side of the trees, hopping back on off the cycle path. He's getting himself well accustomed with bouncing around in that peloton and getting himself ready for the final sprint. Gerben Thijssen. And Tim de Klerk comes back to the front for Soudal Quickstep. Can they get it together for Fabio Jakobsen, who's won this race twice in the past, 2018 and 2019? Which one of these teams is going to get their build-up right, and which one of the sprinters can finish it off? And can Alexander Kristoff get yet another win? There he is, right in the middle of the shot, seemingly surfing by himself there, the former European champion, Vuno X. Doesn't seem to have anyone around him, Robbie.
No, he's just using his teammates right in the middle of the peloton. He's just using Jaco Alula, taking Dylan Groenewegen there on the left of screen. So they've moved themselves up, and it's like somebody's just hit the button on the washing machine and it's ready to go into full cycle. You're just going to see teams just pushing their way up. If they can get a gap up the left and the right and coming up and around, you're just constantly improving your position, because the moment you think, okay, I'm fine, I'm just going to stay here, you're going to find yourself 20 positions further back. It's the type of race and the type of circuit with so many top sprinters and all their teammates. You have to constantly push forward, because if you're not going forward, you're being shuffled backwards.
Good ride by these four today to still be there with 12 kilometres to go. But there is the sprint train-led peloton breathing down the back of them. Bram Dissel doing a long turn on the front for Beat Cycling Club, I should call them. And then Ruben Apers, the Belgian, and Filippo Rodolfo, the Italian, just behind him for Novo Nordisk. And Cyril Dessal, who seems to be now increasingly doing the longer, harder turns of this breakaway of four. Bram Dissel getting, I think, one last drink there before they really do feel the peloton breathing down on them. It's flattened out a little bit more now. Coming into the final 10 kilometres in this, the Schelder Prijs Sprinters' Delight today. Very light winds, beautiful, sunny, cool by Australian standards, warm by European standards day this April.
This is one of those sections where it really gets wider, Jez, and then there's that sudden rush forward. They're coming left and right. And then another one of these 90-degree corners that's going to just string things out again. That's why it's so important to make your run at the right time on the lead up to one of those corners. Cruise through, only a light dab of the brakes on the way in. Where those further back, a lot heavier on the brakes, bigger acceleration, wasting more energy, and have a lot of work to do to get themselves back to the front. On the right-hand side, Alpecin de Koning now looking in control at the moment for Jasper Philipsen. Left-hand side, Soudal Quickstep. But Fabio Jakobsen, he's back in about 40th position. Oh, no, there he is, sorry. He's in about 12th position, just poking through between the red jerseys of Lotto Soudal, right next to Caleb Ewan.
And Mark Cavendish on the outside of the bunch, just looking down the outside too. I guess we were talking earlier, Robbie, weren't we, about what it feels like to be in that peloton right now. These are, I guess, even more dangerous moments, because it's not going absolutely full flight right now, is it? And there's a lot of bouncing off each other in that tightly packed peloton.
Yeah, there's a lot of that shuffling, just pushing, just leaning on each other a little bit, just a little bit of shoulder work, not full aggressive yet, but just that manoeuvring themselves into position, just trying to dominate the front. And this is where if there's a touch of wheels, then suddenly you're talking about a peloton of 30 riders, not 130.
We have Alpecin de Koning and DSM, the Belgian and the Dutch team, off to the right of the shot. And then to the left, we have Jaco Alula, the Australian team. And they are alongside Soudal Quickstep as well. There must come a point, Robbie, and I've often thought this, where surely, because we've got what have we got? Probably 8-9 teams here who could put together a really strong matching lead out compared to the others. There has to come a point, doesn't there, where one of these teams or a DS in one of those teams says, look, keep the rider up there and out of trouble, but don't try and be setting the pace at the front, because there just isn't the width of road to do that. Or am I being naive? Is there ever a point where your team would say, look, let's stop trying to get the whole team to the front, and instead, is there ever, Robbie, in a sprint like this, you're someone who's helped the likes of Dylan Groenewegen in recent years in terms of sprint lead-outs and drilling a sprint lead-out train. Is there ever a point where you say to a team, right, lads, spread out? I know that might sound counterintuitive, but is there ever a reason for that?
Well, not sort of spread out throughout the peloton, but sometimes you can be at a disadvantage if you've got too many teammates and they all want to ride in a line and put the sprinter on the back, and then suddenly if the teams are all across the road and you're the sprinter on the back of your team, you find yourself in about 47th position, even though you're sitting on the back of your team. So you sometimes want to ride a little bit more in a protected position further up in that train, and then let the others come to you, or not ride in a long strung out line, but in a bit more of a bubble. Keep yourself a lot closer to the front that you can manoeuvre your way out of trouble and keep in a good position, because you're trying to look after the sprinter's legs. Here comes the Broekstraat for the last time they're on the cobbles.
They've done well, these four, to hang. I did not think they'd make it onto the Brookstraat the last time, judging by the time gap when we came onto these finishing circuits, but they have. And Bram Dissel is the Dutchman who leads onto them. This race, of course, having started in the Netherlands, worked its way away from South Zealand through the North Brabant into Belgium, and now into the very edges of Antwerp. Right on the outskirts of Antwerp, where we are in Schoten right now, on the very forgiving, long, smooth, cobbled strip of the Brookstraat. And it is Alpecin de Koning who lead onto it. Just looking to see if Mathieu van der Poel is still there. I don't think he is, Robbie. I think you're right. He may have done his long turn and swung off now.
I thought he might be just hiding there in third wheel. I think he might be there in third. Just the rocking shoulders. I thought I recognised him. A couple of riders from Uno X done their job for Alexander Kristoff. They're out the back. Jaco Alula, they've put themselves onto the back of the Alpecin de Koning train for the moment across the cobbles, dip in the road. And they'll be getting ready for that right-hand turn, which brings them off and along the Albert Canal. There's Lotte Soudal on the right-hand side, trying to bring Caleb Ewan back forward. Kouderman Tass and his teammates on the left, with Cavendish just behind them as well.
Yeah, Fabio Jakobsen seems to be freestyling it a little bit as well, moving up and down as he does. This is Tim Naberman. I think may have a flat. Yeah, he's got a. Ooh, looks
broken
like a
wheel,
yeah,
broken spoke.
Buckled rear wheel. You don't often see that. Deep section carbon wheel wobbling all over the place. Thankfully, having no rim brakes nowadays makes it easier for it to wobble around without causing a great problem, but wheel change needed.
So still on the cobbles of the Brookstraat for the moment. Little break in between, smoother road. Back onto the cobbles again, almost done. And Alpecin de Koning still in control. DSM well organised on the right-hand side, sliding their way up. Cofidis been riding a really good race, keeping Max Walschack well protected as much as you can provide a slipstream for the big man. He's a metre 90 something and 85 kilo. There's not a lot of slipstream that a smaller rider can give him. They're off the cobbles, away from the Brookstraat and along the Albert Canal for the last time.
Yep, that is cobbles done with for today in this week, which builds up to, of course, Paris-Roubaix. Cobbles of a very, very different type. The Pardet of Northern France. Jasper Philipsen on the radio there. He has got his team absolutely drilled here, hasn't he? And you're right, Mathieu van der Poel looking like he's barely breathing. Third wheel right there for Alpecin de Koning. They are ready to do a big lead out, but of course they've got competition on the right-hand side of the screen from the Australian team. Jaco Alula, who have Dylan Groenewegen, penultimate wheel, so he has a sweeping rider just tucked in behind him. And the rider's really pressing up here. One or two of them getting caught the wrong side of the cycle path. That commuter on the cycle path getting a little bit of a scare, being in the middle of the bunch. These four hang on to 14 seconds with just under 6 kilometres to go of this, the 109th edition of Schelder Prijs. In the middle now, it's Astana, Kazakhstan, who have Mark Cavendish tucked in. He's got 3 riders in front of him right now in the light green. Cav has looked nervous and on it all day today, in a good way though, I think, Robbie. And there he sits, the British champion, 4th wheel with 3 teammates in front of him.
Yep, he's had that really concentrated look on his face, a look of determination all day long, and the team looks more concentrated. They're more cohesive around him today, so let's hope for them and they can get the job done. Fabio Jakobsen's made his way up to the wheel of Jasper Philipsen, so Jakobsen, he's chosen who he wants to follow. Jaco Alula, they started pretty hard, pretty early, 6K to go. They've now been able to just slot onto the wheel of another team who's come over the top of them. They're just keeping Dylan Groenewegen in good position, and it's a really important right-hand corner coming up very, very shortly now. They've got the break in their sights. That narrow corner, that's where you need to be at the front.
These are the final 5 kilometres of this, the 109th edition of Schelder Prijs, with me, Jez Cox, and Robbie McEwen. We have 4 riders who are just about to be swallowed up by the peloton, who is led by some of the best sprint trains in the business and some of the best sprinters in the business, ready to do their thing. 5 kilometres to go. Mathieu van der Poel and his Alpecin de Koning team ready to lead out the informed sprinter of the season, Jasper Philipsen, the 25-year-old Belgian, who is in white-hot form at the moment. Let's see if they can make it count. Will they be able to use Mathieu van der Poel in their final drill down? It's going to be Cyril Dessel who's going to be the last one to be caught. It's been a great ride by this Belgian rider today for Bingol Wallonie Bruxelles, and he will be the last rider out there by the looks of it.
Yeah, they're not giving up without a fight, this breakaway. It is coming to an end, still 3.8 to go, and the lead out ramping up behind, still Alpes and de Koning. They've taken a couple of them back, so just the one man remaining in front now in Dessalt with 4K to go, and they are almost now at that right-hand corner. He's hanging on, but it's only going to be a few more seconds. He'll be swallowed up and spat down towards the back. It's still Appelsen de Koning in control. Lotto Destiny with Caleb Ewan moving forward now. Jaco Alula a little bit swamped, shuffled backwards, trying to make their way back up through the centre. Here they swing out for the entrance to that right-hand turn.
Yeah, this is when it starts to get technical and tricky, and just as we thought it might be, Mathieu van der Poel is leading at the moment. And
look at
making
Jacobsen without teammates, but using Alpecin de Koning as his own.
Yeah. Jacobsen is sitting yet just at the back of that string. Fabio Jacobsen in that European champions jersey. DSM trying to move up too, as are Entomache Circus Wanty with Gert Matthijssen. Emil Leipen's also moving up there as well, right in the middle for Trek Segafredo. There's a lot of looking around going on, Robbie.
Yeah, Syriza just up on the footpath briefly there. Lotto Destiny trying to come through with Caleb Ewan. Groenewegen can be shuffled a bit further back. He's on the left-hand side, but it's still Alpecin de Koning for Jasper Phillips and giving him an armchair ride. Here come DSM now on the left for Sam Welsford.
Still Mathieu van der Poel leads at the front for Alpecin de Koning, but there's not too many long straights just yet. We're about to get into the longer straights, though, and really the speed being ramped up out of that as we see the peloton thinning down. It is still Alpecin de Koning who've got absolutely everything right so far. Can they bring it home for Jasper Philipsen? If he's in the right position, he's back on the radio again. I presume he's on the radio to Mathieu van der Poel at the front saying just a bit more, a little bit more, just ring it out.
Yeah, Van der Poel just trying to get him to that next right-hander and then line them up to get to that chicane that's coming up shortly. So Van der Poel through first. Riders pushing up the inside from DSM. They got separated now. They're shuffled back a little bit from Alpecin de Koning, but this is not such a bad thing for them because the riders coming through now for DSM, they are pushing on. So Alpecin de Koning, they slot in there with Philipsen. Cav still on the wheel of his teammate Kees Bol coming through. Ewan being brought up on the right-hand side in the wheel of Jasper de Burst in the red. And if you're too far back now, you must make your move or you're out of it.
Raymond Sinkendam being called back in to do a little bit more for Alpecin de Koning there, the Dutchman. And now come Lotto Destiny. Caleb Ewan, easily recognisable style, the back of that string of red and light blue jerseys at the front there. They've popped up at just the right time by the looks of it. Lotto Destiny haven't done too much. They've been adding ones and twos to the chase, and now they're there in good numbers. DSM seem to have spread themselves a little bit more now as well. Florian Sénéchal, the French champion, right in the middle. Fabio Jacobsen, though, I do still think he is freestyling it a little bit more today, Robbie, and picking his wheels as he wants to, not necessarily looking for his teammates either. Where is he? He's got one, though. There we go. He has picked up one as well on the outside.
Yeah, he's got Van Lerberg at the moment with him. Jaco Alula coming with Groenewegen on the right-hand side in the blue and white, but it's still Lotto Destiny. Caleb Ewan, third wheel through under the kilometre to go. And this is where the rush is going to come. The road opens up again, so you've got plenty of room. There comes Groenewegen up the middle, right-hand side. Moschetti from Q36.5. But it's Lotto Destiny with a big lead out. Alpecin coming now on the left of Caleb Ewan with Jasper Philipsen.
Groenewegen right in the middle of the shot there, getting onto Moschetti's wheel. Moschetti's been delivered, though, and he's jumped onto the back wheel of Jasper Philipsen by the looks of it. Sam Welsford appears to be fourth wheel right now. Caleb Ewan battling for that, and Dylan Groenewegen just on the back wheel of Caleb Ewan. A lot of bashing. Moschetti finds his way into the back wheel of Caleb Ewan, and the sprinting is starting. The final lead out coming now by the looks of it for Jasper de Bust. Jasper de Bust, Jonas Rickard, Sam Welsford in the middle, Mark Cavendish to the left. Gavin Tyson also popping up. It's going to be wide. Mark Cavendish right in the middle. And Edward turns as well. Jasper Philipsen on the right of the shot, up against the barriers. Has Philipsen done enough? Yes! Right on the line. All that hard work being done by Alpecin de Koning. And Jasper Philipsen looks like he's got it, Robbie. It was close, though. My goodness me, that's a tight left-hander after the finish there, isn't it? But Jasper Philipsen looked great.
Well, the top favourite coming in, Jasper Philipsen, his team dominating that final lap, giving him an armchair ride and then able just to find his way out. They slid up that left-hand side lady past Caleb Ewan in his lead-out train. It was Jasper de Burst who did the big lead-out. Ewan was caught inside and Philipson took full advantage. There was a fair bit of push and shove. Groenewegen trying to just move Cavendish out of his way, had to back out around him and come again. He finished off the podium, but I think Cavendish may have snuck in for third place there, so that is a really encouraging result in any case for Cavendish, but no doubt Jasper Philipsen, fastest man on the day.
It was close though, Robbie. I'm looking forward to watching that overhead. That was a lot of elbows in use there. I can say it now, by the way. I'm just glad to see the final 2 or 3K of that pass off, by the looks of it, without any problems either. Because at times I thought, my gosh, there's a lot of bouncing going on here.
This is going to be really good to watch from overhead as Jasper Philipsen gets the congratulations. Well, the man in form, he has been since his first race day. Omloop at Nieuwsblad and Kuurne wasn't quite in it to win it. But after that, twice at Tirreno, Brugge de Panne, and now the Schelder prijs. He is racking them up one after the other.
Yes, he really is.
What a lead out, he says.
Yeah, the team rode faultlessly for him today, actually, and in the end really did have control of that. They bossed it. Absolutely bossed it. Raymond Sinkerdam and others. Mathieu van der Poel playing his part without being the big man as such, just laying down the watts at just the right time and then swinging out of the way, as Robbie suggested he might. He is, I'm sure, ready for Paris-Roubaix at the weekend. I'll echo what you said, Robbie, by the way, as the Englishman here. Great to see Mark Cavendish at the pointy end. We'll wait to see exactly where he finished, but I'm certain he's inside that top 10, unless he slipped a little bit. Coming towards the line, he looked good there.
I think he may have slipped in for third, Jez. He was just ahead of Dylan Groenewegen, who was coming hard and fast, and I think was fourth.
Let's have a look at it again.
Difficult to tell. Here we go from the overhead. So this is where Lotto Destiny still in control, but Caleb Ewan shuffled back. Welsford passed him as well. So you've got Lotto Destiny on the front, but then two riders from Alpecin de Koning, then Welsford, then Caleb Ewan. Then it's Moschetti who slots into Groenewegen. He wanted to follow Ewan. Cavendish then just to the right of Groenewegen and now gets a run. Look at Hofstetter, I think it is going. Groenewegen comes out, he's pushing Cavendish. He wants to get out and he can't. The sprint's about to ramp up. Philipsen through the middle and the door's left open on the inside. Whoever that was that did go, look through, slide up through the inside. And Groenewegen, he tries to get through, just comes up short. Cavendish is third, Welsford in second, Tassen in fifth. Caleb Ewan not able to get his way through. But just see, it was Edward Turns, in fact, from Trek Sigafredo. He just left the door open for Edward Turns, and it was almost like an invitation. You don't have to ask Jasper Philipsen if he wants to come through. Welsford followed through that gap. Turns faded, so it's a clear win for Philipsen. There it is. Philipsen, Welsford, nearest to camera. Yep. Cavendish with the throw takes third. Groenewegen, Tassen, Turns, Ewan, Walshade, Itamar, Einhorn, Nitzelo. Plenty of top names. Jordi Meus also up there. Throw a blanket over the lot of them.
Yep. You have to say, I wouldn't mind watching up a little bit further back to see whether Edward Turns had actually could have just closed that door just very gradually. It would have been a bit dangerous, but as you say, it was fully open, wasn't it?
He could have. Because he went early. He was the man who went early, and Cav got a run in that wheel.
Well, that is the 27th win of the man from Moll's career, Jasper Philipsen. And we need to remind ourselves he is still only 25 as well, and I still think the best might be yet to come. He does seem to be coming into this purple patch right now, though, Robbie. There is the top 10 confirmed for you. Sam Welsford in second, Mark Cavendish looking much, much better today, Cav. Dylan Groenewegen in fourth, Gerben Thiessen in fifth, and Edward Turns taking sixth place. Robbie, good to see Itamar Einhorn in ninth there as well. Another improving sprinter, the Israeli as well. Keeps improving season by season as well. Looking back now at some highlights of the day as it happened out there. This was the moment that our 7 riders went clear. And they were out there the whole race. Went clear from very early. in the end, as we saw just now, there were only 4 of them left. But these 7 worked well together and built up a lead of just over 3 minutes at one point. Actually, throughout, as you would expect, it was mostly the teams that we've just seen doing the big lead out into the finish who were contributing to the chase. Jaco Alula, Lotto Destiny and Sudal Quickstep, along with Bora Hansgrohe as well. And then as we came onto the finishing circuits, I was thinking these 7 would be caught a little bit sooner, but actually they survived deep into this race in the glorious sunshine, moderate temperatures and extremely light winds that made for a sprinter's delight in the 109th edition of Schelder Prijs. Could not have been more different to last year's conditions where Alexander Kristoff was the winner. I'll look to see where he finished today, actually. We are just continuing to flesh out our top 15, 20, 30 places to see where riders dropped to and where they were. This was with 2 laps to go. And Ruben Apers leading the other 6 riders across the line. And then we started to see half the breakaway, or just under half of it, fed back into the peloton with Tim de Klerk doing long, hard turns on the front alongside the Albert Canal to bring them back. And it left these 4 out front and clinging on well to their lead. Robbie, I'll hand over to you for these closing stages again as we watch a slightly different angle of the build-up to this sprint, maybe.
Yeah, well, as they came through to get the bell, our 4 riders still away and hanging on to 20-odd seconds lead. You could just tell it was all still to come in the peloton. It was Alpecin de Koenig who took it up pretty early. They went to the front around 10k to go and just in control, staying in the front, armchair ride for Jasper Philipsen, and then a big turn down to this critical right-hander away from the canal by Mathieu van der Poel. So setting his teammates up, and he did another big one. And when it came to the sprint, Edward Turns went early, but he left the door open. Philipsen waltzed straight through it. Welsford followed him through and in for second, and Mark Cavendish held off the rest for a podium spot. A really encouraging result for him. But the man in form has been in big form the last few weeks. He dominated. Philipsen gets the win.
Fascinating, Robbie. Watching the right-hand side of the screen there, the riders left as they came towards us. There we were talking about Edward Turns leaving the door open as well, but Sam Welsford himself had nowhere to go in the end in that sprint. He freewheeled in behind Jasper Philipsen. They're having a little bit of a focus here, I think, on poor old Mathieu van der Poel in the build-up to to Paris-Roubaix. The Schelder Prijs, such an important race midweek, but yet understandably we are already thinking about Roubaix, and all day today the cameras have been on Van der Poel watch. His teammate has done the business today. In fact, Mathieu van der Poel himself has done the business in getting him into the right position. At a big, strong lead out there from Alpecin de Koenig. And yeah, we're having a bit of a Mathieu van der Poel love-in here as we look at various clips of him through the race. Hoping that's your thing at home, folks. He's a very distinctive, aggressive, but wonderfully sort of loose rider to watch as well, isn't he, Robbie? He's unmistakable form on a bike, Mathieu van der Poel.
Oh, yeah, it's like he's just been poured onto that bike. He's so nice to watch ride a bike. He's like a metronome. He's just got perfect style. Everything looks symmetrical, and he's just got so much power. And just when you think he's done, he can go again. He did that big turn down that along the canal and into that right-hander. Then he did another big one after that to bring them up towards that chicane inside 2k to go. So he set the team up perfectly and done the work effectively of 2 or even 3 riders of sort of normal humans. And I heard actually Jasper Philipsen say in Flemish, where they caught it on the microphone of the camera that was near me, said, what a lead out, that was not normal. Which is a Flemish expression that's used a lot. Niet normaal. It just means it was just incredible, and it was. It was a fantastic lead out by their team. But then took advantage of other teams when they needed to and when they could. And we saw it was Lotto Destiny got to the front, but then Alpecin de Koenig just took the lead off Caleb Ewan and followed Jasper de Burst. And then when it came to it, Edward Turns, he made the right move going early, putting himself in position. by not closing the door on the left. He let Philipsen come back through, followed by Welsford. And there's a lot of ifs, buts and maybes. But if Edward Turns had closed the door on Philipsen, he couldn't get through, Mark Cavendish would have won the schelder press.
Yep, I can see that. Well, let's see what our winner had to say just after the finish.
Dr. Philipsen, many congratulations. Your second victory ever in the schelder press. And it looked easy, but I'm sure it wasn't.
It wasn't that easy. The legs I felt at the end, but I think it was for everyone. It was not a typical hard race here in schelder press like we saw the last years with the wind, but yeah, that also made it an exciting sprint at the end.
How did you manage to get into the good position? Because that was key for your victory, I guess.
Yeah, I think the team did an amazing job. Actually, we didn't really have a meeting for how we were going to do it, but all these guys are really experienced in lead out. They know what they do and they know how to bring me in a best spot.
How high do you rank this victory? Your second ever in this race. You won Brugge de Panne earlier this season.
I'm really happy to win it now twice and more than one time. So yeah, hopefully I can add some more in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Congratulations, Jasper Philipsen.
Well, he started his season at Omloop Het Nieuwsblad, finishing just outside the top 30. DNF the next day in Kuurne-Brussels-Kuurne, but then the form started to pick up. Tirreno, he got his first win on stage 3, and then he got another win on the final stage as well, and really started hitting his straps. 15th at Milan-San Remo, of course, and then the following week, winner in brilliant style at the classic Brugge de Panne in the hammering rain from the breakaway as well. DNF'd at the end of that week at Gent-Wevelgem in Flanders Fields, but then 4th at Dwars door Vlaanderen, and the winner today at Schelder Prijs. Perfect conditions, brilliant work by his team, and fascinating what Robbie was saying there about the opening of the door by Edward Turns when Turns started sprinting, peeled away from the barriers and allowed our winner through. That must be one of the most... we're just waiting for an interview here at the moment, Robbie. But here we go, Sam Welsford.
But was it possible to win, you think, today?
Yeah, yeah, it was a good day today. Third last year, second this year, so maybe next year I can get the win. Yeah, it was possible. You know, hats off to Philipsen and Albertson. They did such a really good final, and yeah, fortunately it's a little bit stuck on the barriers there, but you know, in these sprints it's all about split decisions, and I think it can go either way. You know, with stepping out right or holding left. So yes, happy with second, but you know, it's never fully satisfied.
Was the sprint extra complicated because a lot of sprinters were kind of fresh after this kind of race?
Yeah, a super easy day for the bunch, really, which provides a really hard final. So yeah, I think the finish was pretty chaos today. The last 20 to 30k was fighting full for positions, and then you could see. You can see in the final a lot of guys getting screwed over and almost crashing. So I was super lucky to get through and get onto Jasper's wheel. So yeah, it's all about being patient and picking your moments, I think.
Your next goals?
We'll see. Hopefully some more stage racing in the middle of the year, and who really knows what will happen after that. I think we're just taking the year step by step and kind of just seeing how I develop as a sprinter. I think it's already been a really good year for me, but I'm super hungry to get back on that top step, and I'm still improving as a sprinter myself.
Congratulations, runner-up Sam Welsford.
Thank you so much. Cheers.
Robbie, how frustrating must that be? to have to freewheel across the line. He had nowhere to go, was coming fast up behind Jasper Philipsen. He was actually overlapping the back wheel of Philipsen, had nowhere to go, cuts the power and freewheels across the line.